Hello, everyone, and we're live. Apologies for the delay. There's been a conflagration. I like using that word of tech issues and not hygiene issues, health issues, I guess. Some allergies on my end, some tech issues on Jack's end, and some tech issues on my end with Eugene. Anyway, this is really fascinating. Hold on, I have to blow my nose. Sorry, it's basically allergies. Hold on.
It's okay. I hope it's basically allergies. Knock on wood, but a lot of people have little colds.
Yeah, little colds that are not COVID, right?
Yeah, definitely that are not COVID. But the weather has changed here, at least in New York, so drastically, so quickly. I think it caught a lot of people.
Right.
Little cold, little sniffles.
Yeah, I think that may be the issue. So keep it positive, just the cold, just some sniffles. I like your shirt. And to whom am I speaking, you ask? Well, you probably know because it's in the description, but just in case you don't, and let me know, by the way, if you hear an echo, and we'll try to work on it. But this is Eugene Puryear, who is a return guest. I think this is your third time on the show, so things are really...
I'm honored, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know what the record is, but I'm going for it.
Yeah, well, you should definitely, this is prime time in both on this show and in your life. So two very good things happening. And Eugene is a journalist. He's the former host of By Any Means Necessary. And he's a journalist with Breakthrough Media.
Breakthrough News, but...
All right, you know what? It's better than breaking the set.
Than the first two, though. So the next time you're going to have it.
I'm going to say it correctly. Correct. Yeah, Breakthrough News. I do hear a little echo. Does anyone else? Yeah, there's an echo. Maybe lower it a little bit. Can you try to lower your thing a little bit? I wonder if it's just coming out of your... Did you do in both this program and on your... Oh, you're using your phone.
I am, because my computer camera was so bad.
Right. But were you able to...
It wasn't taking my webcam. I don't know. I mean...
Were you able to... Oh, maybe it's on your computer also. Is your computer on? Is it coming out of your laptop too?
It's not. It is not.
Sorry. Jesus Christ.
I don't know. These are new. These are really new Bluetooth headphones. So I only kind of half know how to use them. So
okay. And you don't have regular ones, right?
No. I did, but well, it's a longer story.
All right. So no.
Apple proprietary headphones.
I know. What the hell?
Yeah.
I hate them.
Been deeply problematic. That's why.
Very problematic. Okay. So here's the other option. Would it be better to have Eugene have crappy video quality, but no audio, right? Because you could probably try it through your laptop.
Yeah, I mean, what does the chat say? I in many ways prefer better audio for myself. I'd rather you hear what I was saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to look good, but I don't know how. I can't see the chat on YouTube, so I don't know how it sounds.
Oh, I see. There's a bit of a mix. We have slight echo. Katie sounds okay here. People commenting that I have a cold. I think it's allergies, but yeah, whatever. Sounds okay here. Katie's got a cold. Yeah, Katie has a cold. Send her some soup. Eugene, you are echoing, but it doesn't sound like Eugene is. Oh, Katie, you are echoing. What do people think? Should we try it the other way? I mean, and you sound a bit muffled. So do you have better audio on the other setup?
I think I probably would have better audio there.
So why don't we try that?
Okay, I'm going to leave and come back.
Yeah. So just open that chat from, everyone stay here. Yeah. All right. Kelly asked if restarting my setup would make it better, but I don't think it's an issue with my setup, right? My gosh. It really is. You guys, it's that time of the year. It's fine. Let's roll. All right. It's fine. Well, whatever. Hold on. Sorry. I should probably just he can use phone for vid. Yeah, I mean, he can use his laptop for vid. Yeah, you're right. I mean, if he wants, he can use his phone for vid for later. All right, anyone have any questions? Jack is having his own tech stuff. What else is going on? RBG died. Oh, has everyone subscribed to this channel? I really hate doing this. Please subscribe. Please like. Please share. Please subscribe. Please like. Please share. Subscribe. Like. Share. Call your mom. Call your dad. Call your friends. Call the people who... call the people who you've been avoiding calling. Okay, let's see if this is better. Eugene, are you here? Okay.
Wow, the quality of my video. This is unbelievable.
I mean, it's so bad. I'm glad
I bought this computer literally 4 months ago, and when I bought it, the camera was crystal clear, and it is just unbelievable.
What happened?
I honestly, I have no idea. I'm very frustrated. I have a good webcam, but for whatever reason, whenever this exact program on the Katie Halper show it will not allow me to select.
What does it
the
say?
It won't even use it as an option, which is what I don't understand.
And you use the you know how to set it in your preferences, right? All right.
Yeah.
You have any more light
so-
or anything you put on? Like any more light in the room?
That is the challenge now too, because
Everyone agrees the sound is great.
well, we've gone back to our studio for Breakthrough News, so like all my professional lighting and everything is gone. I'm gonna try to see if I can use the light on my camera.
Oh, good idea. Now let's see. Jack, are you here?
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, now Jack, your sound is good.
There we
You fixed
go.
your sound.
I did. I think I'm all good. I should
All right,
be all
awesome.
good here.
It's not really great light, but it's
not great light, but you know what? There's no echo. Oh no, there's a slight echo again.
Slight better light here.
Is it my headphones?
I'm not hearing an echo.
Okay.
All right.
So you might have it open in 2 windows or something. I don't know.
Oh. But
It's
other
possible.
people were hearing the window. Hold on, let me just shut up a bunch of you guys. This is a cool. Not many shows let you into this process.
I know. Very
It's true.
exciting. Yeah,
it is
really
exciting.
exciting.
This is behind the
Yeah.
scenes. This
It's
honestly,
behind the
people
scenes.
usually have to pay for this.
I know exactly.
I see Brian Frederick did pay for this.
Thank you.
This is a master class, that you're witnessing.
Yeah,
right now
exactly.
in
You know what?
streaming.
Yeah.
So,
It is.
so this is
It is.
this
Yeah.
is professionals doing their thing. So, just
This
sit
is-
back
yeah.
and enjoy.
You
It was
usually
so
see
much better
me.
when I had like studio quality lights in here. Now I just have this like terrible overhead light and my camera light. But
Yeah,
I
but you know
mean,
what?
we
We
can.
can hear you. You know how we can hear you? We can
How's
hear
that?
you
hear me.
loud and clear by any means necessary.
Well,
You like that? That's a little
she'll be here all
pun.
weekend, folks.
That's a pun based on it's a little Sputnik based pun, right?
It is indeed. It is
Okay.
indeed.
So you guys, in case you don't know, Eugene again was the co-host of By Any Means Necessary, and Loud and Clear is another program on that same.
Yes.
Eugene looks like he phoned in from 1999.
I
Well,
do. It's unbelievable.
yeah, I
It's
like it.
true.
I like it. So
1999. No, we couldn't even do this. I don't know
No.
how old is that commentary?
Seriously.
1999. This
Tell
would
us
be
your age
amazing in
now.
1999.
yeah,
You
tell us
kidding
your
me?
age. This would be like Back to
I'm
the
34.
Future.
I'm 34.
Oh no, not you. I mean, it's
Oh,
fine,
that
but
person.
I'm trying to ask the person who
1986?
said that.
1986.
Oh,
Maybe.
so they're
There it
they're
is.
only a
Another
little
1986.
younger.
There we go. Not a bad year.
Not at all. Not at all.
No,
Good
it's a
vintage.
good year to.
It was a
good
very
year to
good
be
year to
born,
quote
yeah.
Frank Sinatra.
Except Loud and Clear has been canceled. Is that true?
Well, I mean, they left, but it hasn't been sort of canceled in the sense that it's over 100%. I know that the team of Loud and Clear, I don't know what the status is of it, 100% is going to be putting out a new podcast. So it's still going to be around. I think it's going to be maybe in a weekly format, though, not daily.
Right.
But I don't have the full information in front of me, unfortunately. I'm sorry, but
Okay.
people should look for it. I mean, it'll have a different name, but it'll be out.
Oh, so it's not gonna be called that anymore. All right. Maybe
No.
you can tell us as someone. Maybe you guys can do should do a whole podcast about losing a show on Sputnik.
Yeah. I also left of my own accord, so I didn't.
Well, that's
lose
what
it.
when I say lose, I didn't say. Did I say anything about
It's just the implication.
implication? You're right.
Should
Yeah,
this not
sorry.
make you like beloved person by the centrists now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all the people who are also spun up by RT and everything like that.
You're
Should
right.
this not now give you
You should
like
be on
the
MSNBC.
this could give you the most the most authenticity of all. Like everybody will want to hear from you.
They think I'm
Totally.
a sleeper agent. It's too late. I've compromised myself.
Oh man.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you should totally get you guys. MSNBC hire this man.
Yeah.
And
You're watching.
I mean,
And I bet
just
you
try to
are.
imagine. Yeah. Hi, Rachel. Hi, Lawrence. Try to imagine him looking like he's from the present and not from not from a 1986 born person's image of 1999.
That's true. Well, if
Yeah.
you go to at BT Newsroom across all of your social media platforms,
Yeah.
you can see me in
Oh,
very high
BT
definition.
Newsroom. As in
4K,
Break the News.
4K even, as in Breakthrough News. Look at that.
I messed it up again. I mean that time, but again, I have a bit of a head cold. Breakthrough News, not okay.
You got
Breakthrough
it.
News. Oh my
You
god.
got
All
it.
right. All right, I got it. So let's talk about let's talk first of all about what is happening in the world of PSL. So Eugene, you are a former presidential candidate.
Yeah. Vice presidential candidate.
Vice presidential candidate. You are a member and part of the central committee of the PSL, which is Party for Socialism and Liberation. And there's you guys are in the news. So can you just set up why you're in the news and what has happened? And also I forgot to at the beginning of the show because we did a reverse order thing. This is Jack, my Sunday night co-host of Struggle Session.
My microphone was messed up, so sorry.
Was messed up,
sorry,
yeah.
everybody.
So this was like real break the news equipment on many fronts. And Eugene, you were on the show with Leslie Lee, who is the co-host with Jack of Struggle Session.
Yes.
So okay, now that we've met, yeah, please tell us the latest with PSL.
Well, no, I appreciate it for sure, and the opportunity to talk about it. I mean, obviously, in some ways, I'd rather not be, but I think a lot of people have probably seen that in Denver, towards the end of last week, 6 activists, 4 of whom are PSL members, everyone involved, leaders and participants, and the mass protest movement that emerged, certainly in the wake of George Floyd, but in particular around justice for Elijah McClain, who was brutally murdered by Aurora PD, and especially too, as the Denver, media has been saying themselves about those who have been arrested, especially, Joe Northam and Lillian House, who I think have the heaviest charges on them, is that, these are prominent protest leaders. It's not unbelievable, but I mean, it's certainly an outrageous situation. I mean, these people who have been arrested have been charged with a range of charges. Many people have 10 to 15 charges, many misdemeanors, also many felonies, including kidnapping. Some people are charged with kidnapping for a protest.
That is so for what? Kidnapping? They were kidnapped to the police station or something like that, where they were.
What it comes down to is that there was a large protest at the Aurora PD police station. It was the station where these cops who had taken this photo mocking Elijah McClain being choked to death had been from. And so a huge number of people are obviously outraged by this. Many people come to this protest, and people, from the point of view of civil disobedience, say, well, we're not going to move until there's justice in this case. Sort of the classic sense of what a protest is. And they're now trying to turn that into some sort of, violent kidnapping as one of the charges. And that's really the nature of all the charges, is to really change the narrative on this mass protest move, which has been huge. I mean, people don't necessarily hear as much about Denver, but many, many events, thousands and thousands of people have come to many of them and really energized this struggle. And, you look at also inciting a riot. There's, the impeding a highway and different things like that. So the attempt to create this reverse imagery that somehow this mass protest movement that certainly was radical and grassroots, but was uniting a broad subset of people to really expose the police and the Aurora authorities is now being cast as some sort of criminal enterprise. And the final thing I'll say on that, DA Dave Young of the 17th Judicial District in Adams County, who is behind these charges in Aurora, a Democrat, by the way, he is also the person who refused to press charges against the cops who killed Elijah McClain. Wow. So everyone's all worked up about people prosecuting their political opponents, but here it is right here. I mean, people have been saying all summer, thousands and thousands of people, Dave Young, do your job, prosecute these 3 cops who brutally murdered Elijah McClain on video and lied about it, as the body cam audio showed in terms of what they actually said. And then now all of a sudden he's not charging the cops, and he's arresting the people who have been at the forefront of the leadership of this movement that has exposed the racism, the brutality, the thuggishness that is under the aegis of the police department in Aurora, of course, but which he as DA is complicit in. So, I think it's a classic attempt, sadly, as we see oftentimes with protest movements in this country, is, the state tries to strike back and break them up.
This is like, we've been seeing it with a lot of these protests now, is this like overcharging and, these federal charges and stuff like that. But they're really trying, this is it sometimes drives me mad, because I'm like, this is really happening, everybody. This is what it actually looks like when a crackdown starts. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's really scary. And like you said, there's been so many of these mass protests. I read or something that there's been 8,000 mass protests across the country since the murder of George Floyd, and they just don't get the coverage. It doesn't feel that way when you watch cable news. There's a broiling thousands of protests going on any given day.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I think it's an incredibly important point. I mean, I think you think about that New York Times article that came out saying some millions and millions of people protested, the largest movement they think, maybe in the history of the country in terms of individual participants. And it's still kind of covered as a sideshow,
Yeah.
really to Donald Trump and whatever he does, because he seems to drive every media cycle, even by the media who you either are the pro-Trump media or you're the respond to Trump media. It seems like with the mainstream to a large degree. And I think you look at a city like Denver, it's a major American city, to have a mass protest movement that people in many places have never even heard of, I think gives you a sense of how much this sort of impact, I think the sort of lack of knowledge of what's going on has in sort of the broader sense of how people themselves, feel their own power and their own ability to change things. But, I'll say in this particular circumstance too, I mean, it really is deeply notable to me that it feels like, I think you're so right, Jack, this is the start of a crackdown. There's almost like an arms race, if you will, by both major parties now to seem like they're good on law and order. I mean, of course, Trump is doing his thing, but, you've got Biden saying anarchists should be prosecuted, running, ads against the uprising in the Midwest. You've got this, Muriel Bowser in D.C. saying Trump isn't tough enough on protesters and they should arrest more protesters. Now you have this guy, Dave Young, this Democrat, who's going after people in Denver, his own political opponents. You got the Josh Hawleys of the world, and people, or Tom Cotton's rather, saying in the New York Times, send the military in. I mean, it's this bipartisan move towards narrowing the scope of people's ability to really stand up and fight for what's right. And Trump is so extreme, it often makes sort of the lesser edge of that seem so reasonable. It's like, well, compared to Trump, it's so reasonable. But the register in which we're moving, I mean, think about how far we've come since, say, Standing Rock to now, with people just being totally outraged at the use of military equipment, rightfully so there. And now it almost being seen as if it's somehow mainstream.
And also, they just have the full military equipment in every city. It's like Kenosha, this tiny small town in Wisconsin. I'm like, what the fuck? They have like RoboCop equipment there? Like, what the fuck is going on?
Yes.
Like,
yeah,
it's amazing. Go ahead, Katie. Please.
No, so can you can you just set up what happened, who Elijah McClain is? I mean, I was actually saying to you, Eugene, earlier that I kind of feel almost conflicted and bad because this kid, I mean, he was 23, but he looks younger, and this is him, as you can see in the image.
Well, the older you get, the younger 23 seems too,
Yeah,
23 is pretty young.
But he also looks young for his age. And I was saying that it's like, this is, there's such a dangerous trope of like, he's no angel, where it's like, we're only supposed to care about people who are killed by cops if they look really unthreatening. And if they look threatening, well, then we're supposed to understand where the cops are coming from. And obviously that's bad. But this is like an especially heartbreaking case, even though all of the cases that we've heard about are heartbreaking and George Floyd is heartbreaking. I don't want to at all imply that like anyone does anything to deserve this at all. But can you just share about who this person was and what happened?
Yeah, no, of course. I absolutely could. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say just really briefly, if you go to pslweb.org/donate4Denver, donate for Denver, the number 4, you can donate to support people. But yeah, Elijah McClain, 23 years old, murdered by Aurora PD. I mean, it really is. I mean, as you said, Katie, I mean, a very interesting person, an amazing person, self-taught on multiple instruments, really just someone who I think was already living such a full life. And I think that's partially why it's so tragic, because you see somebody who obviously, was doing so many great things to just have their life just snuffed out. I don't know the full truth of the matter. I know some people have said he also had autism, but, be that as it may.
He volunteered with animals again. And I really don't want anyone to think that I'm like.
He would play the violin for animals at shelters.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, the role of music as a soothing instrument. Yeah. You can just think about that kind of person. The sort of wouldn't hurt a fly kind of person. And I agree with you, Katie. Obviously, like, there's no perfect victim. Right. But I mean, there is a certain, I think, all of us kind of react. It was like when Tamir Rice was killed. He's 13 years old. And obviously, if he was 19, it wouldn't have made a difference. Right. But like, you still feel like, wow, they just gunned down this young kid. So anyway, he's walking home. Someone calls 911. People, you really got to think, what are you doing when you call 911? Because the person who calls 911 says that I'm not even going to say that this is true or false, but they say that he had on a ski mask and was like arms were flailing. His family thinks he was dancing, which would make sense. I don't know about the ski mask, but the reason I bring it up is the person says on 911, they didn't think he was armed and they didn't think anyone was in immediate danger. So why did you call 911? I mean, I think the ingrained, like people say, well, this is the racism, blah, 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 identity politics, da, 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 da. But I mean, this is kind of like the subconsciousness of racism in America, that something that's like non-threatening, somehow you still call 911, right? So anyway, long story short, these 3 cops roll on him. I don't know what's going on with them. I mean, these are just 3 just like thugs. They jack him up. They claim that he reached for their gun when they had a little scuffle or whatever, but you can hear in the body cam audio of one of the cops that he doesn't even remember that ever happening, even though they subsequently said that. They
memorable. It's kind of a memorable thing.
You'd think so. Then they've got him on the ground, handcuffed behind his back, pressed on the ground. At one point they're putting him in a chokehold. He can't really breathe correctly. A couple times he throws up. You can go online and you can read his last words, which are pretty poignant. He's basically pleading for his life. He's apologizing for throwing up, even though it's because he can't breathe, because for whatever reason, they've got him down. I mean, I think just basic humiliation and dehumanization. They're putting him in this cardioid hold, which, stops the blood to your head. So he goes unconscious for a certain period of time. So, all these different issues. And then when the EMT rolls up, because they're trying to cover themselves, they say he has some superhuman strength. That is like, that was going against them. So the EMT gives him some huge shot of ketamine, as if he's hopped up on PCP or something like that. And, that obviously, is terrible. So he ultimately slips into a coma and dies. So from start to finish, the whole thing was basically, an execution. I mean, there's really no other way to say it. But of course, this DA, Dave Young, and he actually put out in June of this year, when the case was coming back up, reiterating in his words that there was not enough evidence to charge these cops with homicide. That they would never be convicted, that it wouldn't be responsible, and so on and so forth. So dodging accountability in any possible way, even though everyone saw the video and it was clear how completely ridiculous it was, how many lies were, completely told here. And just from the very beginning of the 911 call to the end, it was a completely bigoted stop from top to bottom. And I think it's unfortunate someone lost their life, but this is why people were so outraged. This is why thousands of people would come out again and again and again, weekend after weekend, all over the Denver area, because really, quite frankly, it was so outrageous, and it was indicative of the broader, theme in the Denver area of a lot of these cases that don't get prosecuted. I mean, there was a city council meeting a few months ago, I think in July, that was taken over by hundreds of protesters, and there was hours of poignant testimony. The city council of Denver was forced to give over the entire session to the families of police brutality victims and to the community to talk about all these cases that had gone unheard. And so I think that this is really, just like George Floyd in a way, was such a catalyst, because watching someone's life snuffed out so casually on film, I think with Elijah McClain, the same thing. It was a catalyst for so many other things and so many other issues that are out there. So, these cops not charged, but activists who led the movement for justice for Elijah McClain, many of them now, some of them I think facing what could be up to 30 years based on whatever some of these outrageous charges are, that are completely trumped up and completely phony and, designed to rewrite the history of what took place there in Denver over the past few months.
Wow, just a fucking horror show.
Yeah,
really, a lot of horrible shit going on.
As you were saying, he said, so he was held on the ground for 15 minutes, and then he was sobbing and repeatedly saying, "I can't breathe." Yeah. He vomited several times, and as you said, he apologized. He said, "I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to do that. I can't breathe correctly." And while his arms were handcuffed behind his back, one of the cops applied a cardioid control hold, which intentionally cuts off blood flow to the brain by compressing the carotid control hold, by which intentionally cuts off blood flow to the brain by compressing the carotid arteries in the neck, rendering him briefly unconscious. One officer threatened he would have his police dog bite McClain as he lay handcuffed and pinned to the ground. And I wonder if I was trying to look for his body weight and height, but I do wonder if the person who called saw him like, and thought maybe something was wrong with him, which also speaks to another problem we have, which is that people don't know how to deal with mental illness stuff or health stuff. They just call the police. But that's being charitable. I'm not disputing that what you think happened, Eugene, happened.
The way it is in America is like, whether you have good intentions or not, there's nothing you can do, even, you know what I mean? That's really the way it is. Like, whether it's a white person that either wants outright to harm somebody or is just using the police as their like little personal hall monitor agency, or whether they just want somebody to get help. Like, the way that the police like function in America is like, they're the only option for getting social work done, and they're also empowered to murder people when they feel scared. You know what I mean?
Right. I'm not. I mean, again, I was just saying that, like, that speaks to another problem. One of the many problems we have with this.
You're right. I mean, it's one of the biggest problems. I mean, obviously with mentally ill people, so many people who are murdered by the police, who are suffering from different mental illnesses or developmental disabilities or whatever it may be, that police, either don't know how to deal with or just are not going to react in a way, they're feeling their authority is challenged. I mean, I think anyone who's ever been in any encounter with the police, that's the number one thing, right? Is they're trying to insert their authority over you as a person. And, anyone who somehow seems to transgress that, the response is going to be, one response. And I think we see consistently, I forget exactly where this was, but I saw a story about this recently about a place that had a non-police option to address mental health calls, and they had done like hundreds of these calls over the summer and never once needed to call the police for backup. I myself, when I was living in Washington, D.C., one of the things I'm most proud to have worked on, was the NEAR Act and surrounding the issue of violence interruption, and what we've seen in many cities like Chicago, Richmond, California, Boston, New York. I mean, they always, Baltimore for sure, Safe Streets. These programs always get defunded that have significant reductions, between 30 and 70% reductions in shootings and murders in a lot of these cities. One neighborhood in Chicago, 100% reduction in retaliatory murders by just employing people who have credibility in the community to break things up before they even happen. But, it's very interesting that the more successful programs like that are, the more you see they start to get in trouble in the budgets in these cities. And it's surprising because you think, well, this works. And, certainly it doesn't expand the problem of policing. It in some ways kind of makes everyone happy by addressing public safety, but not criminalizing whole communities. But you see the institutional power of the police as a method of social control that when its hegemony is challenged, really starts to push back. And you see, it's not as much about crime as it is about, I think, sort of the fundamental role of policing, controlling property and controlling how people interact with that property, as basically the fundamental basis of it.
And just to clarify, remind people, so David, the DA.
Yeah, Dave Young, I think his name is.
Dave Young, right.
17th Judicial District of Colorado, Adams County, which Bernie Sanders got the most votes in, I believe, in this year's primary.
Right. So progressive place, ostensibly. He determined that these three cops had not done anything wrong.
Well, he would probably dispute that. He wrote a long thing saying they did do something wrong, but it wasn't a crime. So it was this long press release about how I'm not saying it was right, but I can't actually prosecute him. So it's that typical trying to have it on both sides, like, don't blame me, blame the law.
Right.
Which
I'm also not going to do anything about.
Right.
Right. No, it's and I think that's honestly a misnomer. I mean, I think when we talk about the issue of quote unquote police violence, it is true that it is hard to convict cops in jury trials. I mean, definitely anyone who's ever been involved in that knows that. Whether or not it is difficult to bring charges, I think is a very different circumstance. Like, the rules around what is considered a justified shooting are pretty clear, quote unquote justified. I don't know if that makes it in. And I think many, many cases we see easily could be brought in front of a court of law, but the DAs don't want to bring them because they are the cops. And I think people don't really understand that about the judicial system. Like, everything they do is based on the work of the cops. So it's really kind of one unit, the DA and the cops. So obviously they're going to go with the most charitable explanation every single time of what's going on. And I think that a lot of not that the laws couldn't be better in terms of what the quote unquote standard is, but I actually don't necessarily think that all of these police shootings are somehow like legal and inside of the law. I think there's a lack of political will to actually apply what's there to policing, because the police serve so many. Like, why do the police in every major city have these big foundations that give them millions and millions of dollars every single year? Like, public safety is really usually pitched like, do you on the street feel safe? But in terms of the institutional interest of policing and the way city council people and mayors interact with it, yes, it is about people who have public safety claims, but it's just as much about businesses and corporations and powerful interests who want stability. And they want things to appear to be calm, to appear to be safe, for whatever reason. They're workers, they're tourists, all these different things that go into it. And that's a lot of why the police have such a huge budget and presence and military activity, is not to actually do anything, but just to create the semblance of authority in the area. And I think that that's a difficult institutional interest to go against. And I think it's often what's at play in getting the police off the hook when they're murdering people in clearly unjustified ways, because there is a vested interest of a lot of people of them having that level of authority and the ability to impose fear in people's hearts, you know, that you could be killed at any time and no consequence, that the police really do. They rely on that. And how could they not? I mean, there's 40 million people without jobs. You know, you look at every census tract where people are killed by the police all the time. 60, 70, 80% poverty. You know, 20, 30, 40, 50% unemployment. No one is really voting in a lot of these places are consistently, because, you know, they can see that things aren't really changing day to day. I mean, there's a direct connection between the number of police and the level of economic deprivation. I mean, directly. I mean, it's not even fake. I mean, it's 100% clear. The safest places have the least police presence. So it obviously tells you it's about something else, and something that's a lot deeper in our society. So anyway, I just go on all that for this guy, Dave Young. I'm not surprised, but I'm not surprised he's going after this movement because, like I said, 42% of people in Adams County voted for Bernie Sanders. So when you see a grassroots radical movement of young people that is exposing you for all of your misdeeds and terrible policies, that has to have it. To me, that feels like that must be existential to you. And I can see how you would then want to imprison your political opponents, right?
So he's going after people who are protesting against the murder of Elijah McClain, but not after the people who actually murdered him. Yeah,
he's going after the people who have been demanding he do something. So it's like, for 3 months, thousands of people, DA Dave Young, charge these cops. And then he says, oh, I'm actually going to charge the movement leaders. So, I mean, I wish people would be as outraged about this they are about Trump saying, lock her up at the rallies, which, you know, is what it is. But here's a guy who's actually doing it right here in front of our face.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm going to tweet this out now. I'm going to tag him.
Do it. Let's hope he's active on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't really. I didn't
400 something followers, not really
until now. So I don't know, but I'm assuming he's probably been terrible on many other issues.
Right.
You know, it's interesting that the counties out there are kind of split too. I don't know how this will play out, but there's also a Republican who represents some of Adams County, if I'm not mistaken, and some other counties, who turns out as, I mean, I don't know if he's the number one guy, but one of the top advocates for like the death penalty in Colorado and, you know, juvenile life sentences. So there's a lot of law and order suburban politics at play here. And I think that's, you know, as much a factor in what's going on as anything else.
Yeah. I can't believe it. It's like DA's one of people.
Kidnapping, felony kidnapping for having a civil disobedience
How does
protest.
that even work?
I mean, it does. It's completely absurd. I mean, the police have military-grade equipment, and you're telling me they can't leave. But I mean, it just speaks to the issue of what is, and the thing. Same thing with the highways. It speaks to, I think, an important civil liberties issue that really underlies this: is what does it mean to have a First Amendment right to protest? Like, you wouldn't have a First Amendment right to protest if you couldn't be disruptive. I mean, the whole point of it, allegedly, just on its own face, is to prevent authoritarianism and tyranny. So ultimately, like, the ability to have a civil disobedience against police who are celebrating the lawful, you know, what I would view as almost extrajudicial murder of a person, despite them actually having a badge and laughing and joking and taking photos of it. The inability to have a civil disobedience and say, we're not going to leave until you fire these people, being illegal, is outrageous. Or saying that if you're on a highway with thousands of people, that's illegal, is, I think, outrageous. It's basically saying you can only protest if it never bothers anything at all.
Right.
And if that's the thing, what's the point? Now,
1 second, sorry, I have to let a dog out. Sorry about this.
Hold on. I understand.
There's
That's
a dog
important.
barking. Hold on.
These things are important. Man, that is really. Then this is what they do too. Is like they'll trump up charges like this. I also think this kidnapping charge is another one of these
Let me just show you her
times.
so you can see, and now I'm gonna let her out. Say hi, Bodhi. My mom left her in here. I gotta take her out now.
It's another one of these examples of also that cops are gigantic babies that they think it's kidnapping, that they had to stay at the office and be confronted with that they suck.
Right. I mean, it really is unbelievable. You would think that their pride would be hurt by that.
A lot of people have to stay late at the office,
What did I miss? What did I miss?
We were just talking about that the cops are babies for thinking that that's kidnapping.
They're such. I mean, that's the thing is like cops. I mean, not to sound like a cliched feminist, but like neoliberal feminist or something. But there's so much like male ego and insecurity built into all of this stuff. And of course, there are women who are cops, and
but it is true, if we're just being honest about the police, that women are way less likely to be charged with use of force, and it's always way more men when you look at it. And that's not to say that women cops can't kill people, can't abuse people, or that's even the heart of it. But I do think you're hitting at something important about the nature of policing in our society, that it really does draw on the kind of worst of the sort of cultural pathos, like racism, patriarchy, and it really kind of channels the like aggro white male grievance culture that has been created, really as a smokescreen for privilege, quite frankly, and people nothing like the people who they're really,
hold on one second. I don't want to pay attention to a troll, but propaganda in the chat. Can you just tell me really quickly what neoliberal means? Come on, let's do it, because he's challenging me for not knowing it, and I'll tell you what it is in a second. But I'm sure it's on the tip of your hands, right? Propaganda. Let's go. We're all waiting for you guys. Proper. We have almost 400 people in the chat, and I'm so excited for you to drop some knowledge on all of us and tell us what neoliberal is. Come on, guy. Come on, you can do it. Proper. Where are you?
It's going to be a test. Oh, here we go. It
means pro-free market fundamentalism. Are you talking about neoliberalism as developed as a term in the United States or in Latin America? Because they have two different origins. So tell me, let me know your response to that.
Oh, wow.
So are we talking about the Latin Americanist definition of neoliberalism or the United States one? And by the way, that your definition of neoliberalism, that's not neoliberalism. Free market fundamentalism is not neoliberalism. You can argue that there's a relationship between the two of those things, but they're not. That's not the definition.
Yeah, I think free market fundamentalism would be libertarianism.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh my God. Well, I want to thank you. I want more idiots to try to own me because thank you, Carlos Rodriguez. Disagree on many things. You admire your smarts and panache. Thank you.
And panache. I like that.
Panache. Yeah. Propaganda. My God, it doesn't mean feminism. That's for sure. Look it up, Katie. Okay, this is a teachable moment. Please, I'm sorry, and then we'll go back to what you're saying, but this is important. Okay, there's this thing you do in English, in the English language, where you use two words next to each other, and that doesn't mean they're the same thing, right? So if I say a conservative feminist or liberal feminist or neoliberal feminist, feminism. Yes, exactly. That applies to it, right? So you can be a feminist of different political ideologies. Where's propaganda? I want to make sure he's taking this in. Okay. So when I said neoliberal feminism, I'm referring to, and to be fair, the word neoliberal, it's good we're talking about this. It has a lot of different connotations. And when I say neoliberal feminist, I'm not talking about the more Latin Americanist economic model of
talking about a type of person.
I'm talking about a type of person. And really, when you're talking about a neoliberal, to be fair, when you're talking about a neoliberal feminist, it's shorthand for individualists, I would say, not really class-based and very personal-based, and kind of biographically based feminism. What do you guys think? I mean, I think? Yeah.
I think that neoliberal is a perfectly fine term to apply to a type of person, and language changes over time. And an easier way for people to understand it you might even just say liberal feminist.
Yeah, liberal feminist or neolib.
Neolib is fine. Like a lot of these words have taken liberalism has become so neoliberal that it's just like when you say neoliberal to a liberal, it pisses them off more. So I like that a little bit better.
Right.
And when you say liberal to them and are insulting, they're like, I don't understand why that's an insult. So neoliberal is a little bit better because it insults the people.
Well, because it triggers people like propaganda. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
people like propaganda. I like it because it makes people like them more upset. You know what I mean? That's why I like it as a term. That's why it's good as a term. It's useful because it makes this person really mad.
Right. Yeah. And to be fair, like it's the funny thing is like it's true that when I'm using it that way, that is not a bastardization, but it is a new use of it. And I'm not being literal, but the irony is that like you can't actually say neoliberalism isn't feminist. That's for damn sure. Because you just sound really dumb. I'm sorry, propaganda. This is not a case of me calling you in. I was calling you out. Just because you're rude and like you're condescending. And I have a real pet peeve when people are stupid and condescending and rude. It's just a bad look. Like if you want it, I would have been totally receptive if you had said like, I'm confused. I didn't think feminism could be neoliberal. And then we could have had a whole conversation about this. And of course, there's a great conversation to be had about this because being a neoliberal, you could argue it's a bit of a semantics game. Depending on your definition of feminism, you could say it's inconsistent with feminism to be a neoliberal. Lots of people would disagree with you and say, well, if you're a real good progressive feminist, then yeah, neoliberalism is impossible. But people who call themselves feminists are often actually neoliberal. Does that make sense?
I mean, it does. We're getting into sort of the philosophical element of it, but I'm with you 100%. I mean, you're correct. I mean, well, whatever. I don't know if we're getting across this person.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just had to take that. It was just maybe if I wasn't sick, I wouldn't have done that. Oh, what's up with my hair? You see?
I think that's okay. I mean, obviously, it's a good phrase because honestly, it speaks to the complicity of liberalism with what neoliberalism really is a neoliberal order. I mean, it's not free market fundamentalism. It's the reaction of concentrated capital to Keynesianism and the attempt to destroy the state to restore their monopoly profits, not to restore some libertarian free market paradise. And if you're a liberal, quite frankly, you're declaring your allegiance to the capitalist system to some degree as it is, with maybe some slight tweaking, which means that you are indeed adjacent to, embedded in the neoliberal order, thus neoliberal feminism. So not to mansplain that, but I just
that was good.
I wanted to say something myself.
No, I'm glad because I'm a little bit sick, honestly, as people know. And really important thing that you just said is that capitalism and politics. And the reason I said not to be a neoliberal feminist, and to be fair, I didn't mean as if those terms are often hand in hand, but there's a certain genre. To me, a neoliberal feminist is also a lean-in pantsuit feminist. It's feminism of the 1%. And the reason I brought that up is because there's some people. Yeah, seriously. Thank you. Hit the like. Yeah. Since there's some people for whom all feminism is based. I'm right. You were wrong. Thanks, propaganda. Okay. I'm ignoring you for now because this is now morphed into an interesting conversation that an idiot helped give birth to, but we're past that. But there are some feminists for whom feminism is merely like interpersonal microaggressions, and microaggressions are real, but your feminism, when your feminism ends there instead of begins there, that's a problem. And so what I was saying is that there are some feminists, quote unquote feminists, who I think we all know, who are like, it's like, that's really like problematic, and like there's a lot of toxic masculinity in the police force, but also like Bernie Sanders is like really problematic and like bases his own politics on toxic masculinity. I'm just making that like that's a certain genre of person where like their analysis of the police is very separate from capitalism.
Right. No, I think that's 100% true. I mean, there are a lot of people who say, based on the statistics I just laid out about women in use of force, that if, say, you made all the police departments women, it would then solve your problem because you'd have a drastic reduction in use of force, which is actually in some ways besides the point. I mean, yes, I guess it's better to have 20% rather than 70%. But at the end of the day, if people are still being beaten and murdered and harassed and surveilled for no reason at all in completely discriminatory and arbitrary ways, I would say that is like not good. But, it does depend on what your end goal is, I guess.
I got to say, I'm honestly, I am confident in the United States police force that they could find all the sociopath women to keep the violence rate up high. Like they'd be a magnet for all the sociopaths. So they'll keep it up. Don't worry.
No, for sure. I mean, someone said this, I forget who, and I hate that I can't credit them because I appreciated it, but it was around the time of George Floyd, and it was like, you give people a badge, a gun, a license to kill, and, no accountability at all. What sort of people do you think it will really attract?
Really?
I mean,
exactly.
it's one of the most bizarre things. I mean, you hear Joe Biden saying most cops are good. I mean, I actually don't know what percentage of cops are good.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a study a few years back that about 70% of cops thought the worst cops in their own department were not held accountable. Of course, everyone says a few bad apples, but the whole phrase is a few bad apples spoils the whole bunch. So, I mean, I'm sure in any situation you can find like a cop that is not a terrible person. I mean, I don't think anybody is arguing that that's like a species of people that may not exist, but it's actually irrelevant as far as I can see to the way that policing actually takes place, and that even the people who aren't doing the worst things are 100% covering for the people who are, and totally complicit in a system of non-accountability that of course protects them too, but at the end of the day that really shields the worst possible behavior. So I don't really, it's like the Nuremberg defense, you know what I mean? Like I was just doing my job, I was just there. Right. What do you want me to say? But as people, fair to say, that was actually found to not be acceptable in the Nuremberg trial. That at a certain point, you have a responsibility, even at the risk of your own death, to stand up and to do something. And you can't just say, well, look, they drafted me and I was just the guard. I was just there. I didn't do anything. You have to take some responsibility for your complicity in the institution. And I think that's the same thing with policing, is police officers don't want to take any complicity in the institutional whatever, and everyone, well, it wasn't me, da-da-da-da. But at the end of the day, if you're allowing this to happen, I think if any of us worked at our job and someone working with us was just randomly beating, killing, and harassing people for no reason at all, you'd be like, well, I don't want that person associated with me or my profession. I don't want that tag with me. So if you're fine with that being associated with you, which you obviously are if you're a member of these unions, you're paying your dues, you're supporting these policies, they're endorsing Trump, and the worst violations of civil liberties that are out there, then you have to start to ask yourself why this narrative of, well, we always have to say, well, most cops are good and most cops are this, when the evidence, quite frankly, is against more of them being bad than good, and if not that, at least being willing to accept the bad at the expense of human rights. And I think that's an important statement that we have to think about when we think about how the police are categorized, and also how the Democrats are running their campaign right now, trying to appeal to people on the basis of being against authoritarianism, against Putin, against whatever racist and the Klan. They're against whatever they say Trump
Putin.
is.
They are against
Yes, they are definitely against Putin. But yeah, it's just the whole thing is absurd because they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want all the black people in the world to go vote for them, but they don't want to make any legitimate promises for what they're going to actually do on important issues like this.
Actually,
I was going to say, you were talking about that bad apples argument, and with the police, it is like 40% of the apples do beat their wives. So there is that.
Is it really that? Is it really that high?
It's about that high.
It is really high. There's really high domestic violence.
Well, and also that's probably underreported because,
of course,
they're really good at like covering up when they're abusing their partners because they know exactly like how to do it so it doesn't leave marks. And also a lot of cops cover from each other. It's called what's it called?
The blue wall line, the
thin blue line of but it's something in particular. The thin blue line, the blue wall, but there's something else when it's this particular issue. Anyway.
Omerta.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That's what it should be called. That's for sure. That's the biggest gang out there. So I mean, you look at all this history. So I mean, it just goes to show that these people who were arrested in Denver, it's not really that surprising in a way. Like, I mean, as terrible as it is, we're at a moment where the institutional power of policing is being challenged like it never has been before. And so the cops and the DAs and the police unions are terrified and they're lashing out. They're getting support from all the politicians. You'll get support from Trump no matter what. And then if you can just say it's about violence, you'll get support from Biden. And so
one more second. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to pay attention anymore. Propaganda. Just go read some go read some Kianga, Yamada Taylor, Liza Featherstone. There are lots of people who can explain to you why neoliberalism and feminism can coexist. And again, you can have a semantics based debate about that, but I just think you're missing a whole point. And I don't want to keep responding to this, but go look at some Marxist feminists and their critiques of neoliberalism and lean-in feminism and pantsuit feminism. Okay. Sorry, Eugene.
No, well, I also could recommend certainly Barbara Smith as well.
Yeah.
All people who endorse Bernie Sanders, believe it or not.
Yes.
But I do think that angle is relevant about sort of the Adams County Bernie Sanders vote and this prosecutor. I really do believe that people are going to prosecute their political opponents when they feel that they are really in danger. And I think that people are, I think that there are a lot of people who are very worried. That's why all these police unions are endorsing Trump. That really, no matter what people say, that there's much more of a groundswell of people who want to see more fundamental change. I can tell you, living in Washington, D.C. for 15 years, which is a very pro law and order city, despite having the reputation of being liberal, like white people, especially in DC, want to see the cops. And there are a number of people in black communities, especially working class communities, who, you know, to some degree, I think are maybe not the majority, but a significant minority that are for the cops. So, you know, MPD has a lot of social and cultural capital in DC. And I can say for sure, when we started talking about violence interruption in the most pro-cop areas of the city, people were like, oh, well, that sounds basically fine. Like, people are very open to hearing ideas about how to solve public safety issues with non-policing if, you know, when it clearly works. And I think that the police know that, and that it really is kind of a thin blue line, not between chaos and safety,
right,
but between a pro-police oriented way of looking at public safety and one that looks more deeply at the social problems that underlie certain communities, economic, social, cultural issues, whatever you want to call them, and goes from sort of a more root cause perspective. And I think that ability for them to be washed away is not small. And that's what we saw in Denver for months and months, is that of all the cities that really exploded after George Floyd, it was one of the most major. And, you know, you look at Portland, Denver, and Louisville, where I think are where protesters have gotten the heaviest charges. Those have been the places with some of the most sustained, largest multi-day protests over time consistently. And so I don't think it's that surprising that they're attracting a lot of pushback from the authorities of all types. I think this could be anyone. You go to pslweb.org/donate for the number for Denver, donate for Denver, pslweb.org/donate for Denver. Support these people, because it can be anyone. There have been 300 federal arrests. As of June, there were 10,000 people arrested at protest in this country. So, you know, it's many, many more now. And, you know, people, there's all sorts of charges you can get, misdemeanors, felonies. I mean, there really is an effort here. I mean, and again, I'll just draw people. Biden saying that arsonists and anarchists should be prosecuted is dangerous. What's happening in Denver is dangerous. It's becoming normalized that if protests can be deemed as violent or, you know, rioting or out of control, rather than, you know, the justified outrage of communities, there's going to be more of this, and more organizations are going to be hit. More and more people are going to be criminalized. But it's already been, you know, hundreds, thousands of people around this country who are being caught up in a tighter and tighter dragnet. And I think what's happening in Denver, that's what makes it important, is that it's just the tip of the spear of a broader effort. If you think what happened this summer was good, and it's good that people rose up all around the country this summer, then like fighting back against the resistance and the repression that is being put on that movement has to be at the top of your agenda.
Yeah, I'm now writing to the DA, by the way, to ask him if he wants to join our chat. I'm saying, dear DA Young, let's see, would love to have you join our discussion about why protesters are being charged with kidnapping. Is that a good?
Yeah, that's good.
That's a good one.
I think your police are hold on, let me do a little screen share. I mean, I don't want to be, I want to like, you know, I think that, aren't the police embarrassed a little bit that he feels like he has to, okay. Dear, would love to have you join our discussion about why protesters are being charged with kidnapping for merely what?
I mean, for protesting.
And demanding justice?
Yes, they certainly were doing that.
They were unarmed, right?
Well, I mean, you know, this is Colorado. I can't speak for everybody. There is, you know, concealed carry there, but it was not an armed demonstration.
Okay.
There was no, you know, if you look at the photos, it was a normal protest.
Okay.
There certainly was no.
Why you were charging them, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's the one. I mean, more people may get involved depending on the jurisdictions.
Okay.
All these different overlapping jurisdictions outside of these major cities. You know, you never know. But yeah, I mean, he's the one quoted in all the articles. So that tells you something right there.
All right, and demanding justice for Elijah McClain, right?
Yes.
I mean, are your cops that? What's the word? I'm trying not to be problematic. Like,
well, then don't be problematic. I mean, I'll say this because I get your meaning.
That
I mean,
triggerable?
I think,
I don't want to use that word.
what's honestly behind it is. If you want me to think what's honestly behind it is, I think it's opportunistic. I think they know a lot of these things are totally outrageous, but they want to see what they can get away with because they hate this movement. They hate these protests. They hate that there's socialists and other radical people who are behind them. And maybe they won't win everything, but if they can come out of this, what I think they hope for with stronger, tougher laws and say, well, maybe we didn't get everything we want, but we've made it more difficult for them to protest. We've made people more scared to organize because they don't know if they're going to get arrested.
Right.
We've tapped the strength of the organizations by getting people to donate money, that it's all worth it. And so I think, in a way it speaks to the same ethos that you're saying about them, because it's like a sucker punch. You can't win on the merits of the argument. Like, your cops did murder someone. It was outrageous. It is ridiculous. You refuse to charge them and hold them responsible. And so you're completely losing on the merits. So you got to sucker punch the movement to try to take it out, because you are that kind of underhanded, weak force that is willing to do that kind of thing. And I think that it says very much about, the position of the police in Aurora, of the district attorney, and all these other individuals.
How's this? Dear DA Young, would love to have you join our discussion about why you are charging people with kidnapping for merely protesting demand justice. How many of your police officers complain that they've been kidnapped?
That's a good question. It may come out. I mean, it's really unbelievable. I mean, it was July 3rd in Aurora. I mean, people can go look. You can go to the PSL Denver Facebook and see videos. I mean, it's honestly like.
And I'm not making light of any of this at all. I just think it's so ridiculous. Like, did they really, were they like, DA Young, got to talk to you about something. It's a big problem. We were kidnapped earlier today.
I think they probably had a bunch of interns sitting around looking at law books and said, whoever, I'll get a bonus to whoever can come up with the craziest charge. Because like, when you haven't done anything illegal, really, they have to come up with some crazy charge to charge you with, and some wild legal theory, because that's their only real chance, because you've broken no laws. So they have to go for some novel interpretation of some law in a Hail Mary, because again, I think as much as anything else, it's just designed to try to crush a movement that they don't like, to try to take people out of the game who have embarrassed them and who have exposed them for who they really are. And I mean, I guess if I was doing what they did, I would also not want to be exposed. I mean, if I had just randomly murdered somebody, for what appears to be only the worst I mean, for those cops to do what they did to Elijah McClain, I can't imagine what good reason there could be. So really, the most pernicious of all reasons. I mean, it really is wild.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to tell us about? Can you tell us about PSL, about what you've heard from the people who have been arrested?
Yeah, well, they're playing the little shell game, as the cops always do, trying to mess with people. Most people who have not been arraigned yet, right? Which means like there's no bail. To get bail, for people who don't understand, you're arrested, then they charge you, you're arraigned, and at the arraignment, then that's when the issue of bail comes in. So they've been arrested in Denver, because they live in Denver, but for charges in Adams County. And so when that's the case, you got to move to the jurisdiction in order to be arraigned. And even though they could have moved them, they're saying, well, they have 10 days, they're having this, they're doing that. So they're letting people kind of languish in jail to make it as difficult as, to make it as hard on them as they possibly can. And so we will see this week, hopefully there'll be some arraignments and everyone will get out. There are other people who have been named who have not yet been arrested. So it's unclear if this will also expand and grow. And that's why I think it's as important as possible to really support and push back here, because we're in the early stages that, in these kind of big political cases where they go after protesters and go after political organizations, a lot of it is to see what they can get away with. Can they get away with saying that this civil disobedience, protest, if you can even call it that. I mean, people said they weren't going to leave, but there wasn't like a physical locking of the doors, or, they didn't have guns to people's heads. So, I mean, it's completely metaphorical in some ways, but certainly falls within the realm of what would be celebrated if we were talking about the civil rights movement. Whether or not activity like that can be criminalized is what they're going for. And, you look at what happened at J20 in Washington, D.C. You look at what happened many, many years before that at Pershing Park, also in Washington, D.C. You can look at the arrest at the RNC in 2004. I mean, there's a lot of precedent here. Obviously, the Chicago 7 in the 60s, the Panther 21, where, they're outlandish, outrageous charges, and it's the pushback at the earliest efforts by the masses of people. I mean, I think this is extraordinarily important right now. I think the attempt to put resistance or repression on this movement that has really changed the whole conversation in the country, I would say in a positive way, and given new wind into the sails of a lot of movements of a lot of different types and good organizers and good organizing. That's why this is so important. And I really do feel that this, is terrible in many ways. But if we're serious about what we do, we know there's a point where those in power are going to try to strike back, and it becomes a question of what we will do. So we're holding on. Obviously, the PSL, we are around the country doing everything we can do, to build solidarity and to build it out. We've gotten a lot of great solidarity from around the world, I'm happy to say. The MST, the Landless Workers Movement in Brazil, millions of people. The Communist Party of Turkey, which is a very prominent group there. The Communist Party of Nepal, which is the ruling party of the country of Nepal, has supported us. A number of workers' organizations in Africa. The Central Trade Union Confederation of Cuba, that's the workers of Cuba. So we're getting some impressive solidarity from people around the world because they understand what's at stake in the United States. They see what's going on. I have had the privilege to talk to a lot of these people who are struggling in these countries, and they're so excited to see mass protest movements, the Bernie Sanders campaign, the socialists at the local level, the fact that socialism, communism, Marxism, anarchism, that people are talking about it in millions of people in America. They see this and they know it's the hope because America is against all the progressive movements all around the world. And, that's why we're getting solidarity for people in Denver, because they see the importance of these movements here. I think it's very heartening, very exciting. But again, we're revolutionary people. We believe in socialism, not in capitalism, and we don't expect it to be an easy road, but we don't accept these kind of frame up charges. And the roadblocks that are put in front of us are not legitimate. And I think it's a threat to everyone, even if you're not a socialist, even if you think the PSL is too radical, even if you don't think we should have a Chicana communist woman running boldly for president, demanding a people, not a profit-centered society, you can still see how this can really hurt you and come back and hurt all of us. And I really am disappointed that we have to be here talking about it, but very grateful to you, Katie and Jack, for giving me the opportunity to talk about this because, really, I think this could be any of us at any time. The crackdown is not coming. It's definitely here.
Yeah, I mean, why isn't this a bigger... I mean, is this kind of like when Max Blumenthal got arrested and no one really cared because they just hate Max?
I think that, it's probably a combination of things. I think with the mainstream media, there isn't a good Trump angle. I think if I want to be honest, if this was Barr, I think
they think the protests are bad for Biden, so they don't want to cover them. Like they think it hurts Biden.
Or is it right? Or is it because it's a local issue? Because it's the DA there who's a Dem?
I don't know if it's local because I think, Portland was Democrats in a lot of ways, but you could tie it to Trump. I think if Barr was directly behind these and there were federal troops on the street, I think it would be more interesting to the national media that that's the narrative they really want, which Trump is the repressive authoritarian against the broad social movements, and that Biden and Harris are speaking to this sentiment in the population to push back against authoritarianism. Not that all mainstream journalists are that simple. I just think that's what the editors want to see. That's my general belief. We've been getting a lot of grassroots. I mean, people have donated tens of thousands of dollars so far. We're getting a lot of grassroots support. I've been, a lot of organizations, DSAs all around the country, a number of different left organizations I've seen. I believe someone told me BYP 100 here in New York put something up. So we're seeing a pretty broad spectrum of people who are standing up in sort of a grassroots level, but it's not breaking out into the media. And I don't know 100%, but the big arrest in Louisville also made a little bit of media, and that was a different set of people, certainly not communists per se, although good people, when the people were on the lawn of the AG and got charged with 25 years. So I really do not fully understand. I think some of it is really the mainstream media does not really want to cover this movement, doesn't know how to cover it correctly, and is really kind of drawing the easiest narratives to get clicks, which are really about Trump, not going deeply in depth about what's really going on. I think it's unfortunate. I think there's many more millions of people who would want to support the folks who have been arrested if they knew about it, because really what we have seen has been a strong outpouring. 1,000 people marched in Denver yesterday to the jail in support of these individuals, made a lot of noise. People could hear them inside the jail. So, large demonstration of people coming together. a lot of support from people in Denver across the movement. So I think there's a good grassroots groundswell. We got to build it that way. But yeah, if anyone, can convince anyone in the mainstream media to talk about it, I'm sure, we would be more than happy to do that, because for sure, I think there's a lot to be said both about this case and what it really represents. So pslweb.org/donate for Denver. That's the number 4. pslweb.org/donate for Denver is how you can support folks. And shout out to the Colorado Freedom Fund as well, which is one of the bail funds, which is playing a key role and also assisting. They've told that they have a lot of money. They've been able to raise a lot of money from their fundraising. They don't need more money to cover this. And they're also encouraging people to go to pslweb.org/donate for Denver for, the other legal costs, the campaign cost. Who knows what's going to happen with people's jobs and everything like that. These are heavy charges. Some people facing what could be 30 years. So it's going to be a fight. I think we can win. It's obvious the charges are totally outrageous. But, like all political cases throughout history, the Scottsboro Boys, the Chicago 7, the Panther 21, every case we can think of, the Wilmington 10, it's the mass protest of people who really embrace the fight against repression of progressive and radical social movements that makes the difference.
And so for people who are just turning in, can you just summarize what happened to PSL members?
Yeah. So a number of PSL members among 6 people who so far have been arrested, could expand, could be more, in Denver, Colorado. They've been arrested for, bogus charges that the DA themselves are saying stem from 4 protests. So it's the criminalization of protest and the attempt to turn protest into riot. So by charging people with inciting to riot, into bizarre things like kidnapping for having a protest where people were at a police station and said they weren't going to leave until there was justice for Elijah McClain, where another demonstration where people were on a highway and a car was driven into the demonstration. But it's the protest organizers that are being held responsible for impeding a highway. And then there's a range of misdemeanors. So there's a number of just totally bogus charges on anti-racist organizers in the Denver area who are the leaders of this mass protest movement of thousands and thousands of people, mainly demanding justice for Elijah McClain, but all victims of police terror as well. And they're being prosecuted by the guy who refused to prosecute the cops who who killed Elijah McClain, and that they've been demanding. So a DA prosecuting his own political opponents. At the same time, he refuses to put killer cops in jail in Denver. Unbelievable situation. pslweb.org/donate for Denver.
And has the ACLU, NLG, National Lawyers Guild, have you received any aid from them or any love?
I've seen some. I haven't seen anything from the ACLU. I haven't been looking, though, so I can't speak for the ACLU of Colorado. They may have made a statement. I don't know. There's definitely individuals who are members of the NLG who are assisting. So definitely we're getting a lot of people coming forward. A number of members of the Colorado Bar, other people have been very responsive. So there's a lot of people in the Denver area who are outraged by this for sure. It's big news there, that's for sure. And I think a lot of people see it for what it is there in Denver and the surrounding counties. I think there's a lot of progressive people, as this movement shows, in that area that don't want to stand for this.
Yeah, it's really, kind of ridiculous. And, everyone waxing so poetic and everyone so grief-stricken over Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It's like, this is not, you don't have to be a communist or radical. You don't even have to be a liberal to think this stuff is bad.
Right.
Like, if you believe at all in the Constitution or all those things that you say Trump doesn't believe in, and that, everyone else does, and normal politicians do, and all this bullshit about being post-partisan and just coming together, and Republicans and Democrats both agree this is just normal, these are the norms and decorum. Why aren't you upset about this?
Yeah No, I think it's a good point. I think, again, it's one of those moments where I think maybe the reality of America collides with the myth. But I think if people want to be committed to what I would consider the myth of American democracy, you have to consider it on its own terms. And if you consider it on its own terms, this is, if anything that these people are being criminalized for, go back and look. You look at the dates of these demonstrations, the June 27th, which was, went viral around the world because that was where the cops broke up a peaceful violin vigil. Now the organizers of the demonstration are being criminalized. If we were talking about the civil rights movement, I'm sure D.A. Young would be at some BS Black History Month celebration in February, talking about how these people are so great and this was such an inspiring action. I mean, it's the same thing with Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C. She's on the DNC talking about Black Lives Matter, while her cops are extremely violent, have killed a number of people, including someone just a few weeks ago. And she actually took Trump to task for being too weak on putting protesters in prison. And so there's a double standard where we say, well, America's so great. This is the Obama narrative, right? America's so great, not because it was always great. And yeah, there are a lot of problems, but look at how far we've come. There were slaves, and now a black man is the president of the United States. Doesn't that show that America has really made a big change? And I think if that's the narrative you want to go with, I think it's dubious in many ways, but if that's the narrative you want to go with, you really have to ask yourself why it is that things that in that past time that allegedly improved America are now considered to be criminal tactics and criminal acts in this day and age, and why the same politicians who will, as you said very well, Katie, wax eloquently on many things, including quote unquote civil rights, when February comes to get the votes, why they aren't acting that way now, and what that does or does not say about our society.
Mm-hmm.
And what else do you have to say? How? I mean, you're wearing a shirt that says, what does it say? Trump.
It says Trump is now you can't see it because I switched things.
Yeah.
It says Trump is the symptom, capitalism is the disease, socialism is the cure.
So how does that relate to all of this discussion? Because I mean, so many people hear about stuff like this and they say, oh, this is why this is Trump's America, you know, and obviously you're pointing out the fact that a Democrat DA is the person who's going after these protesters. You also pointed out how much Trump supporters are in support of expanding the police force. So how do you balance these two things, given that you don't particularly believe in organizing for Biden?
Yeah. Well, I mean, number one, because Biden is not going to do anything about this issue. I mean, I think we've just seen quite clearly that he has put himself down on the law and order side. I don't know where he was. He's been one of the most law and order members of Congress for the past 40 years. But be that as it may, I mean, you know, his comments are very clear. I mean, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I believe he said that, you know, peaceful protests are good and should be allowed, and arsonists and anarchists should be prosecuted.
Yeah.
Now, arsonist, I mean, I don't want to get into that, but anarchism is a political ideology. I'm a communist. I'm a socialist, not an anarchist.
Right.
Both anarchists
and even you don't want them to be locked up.
I mean, it's completely ridiculous. I mean, it's completely absurd to say just because you say you're an anarchist, but that's serious rhetoric. And for him, so I just say all that to say that also when you look at his surrogates, like when Biden says, I'm going to give he says, I don't want to defund the police. I want to give $20 billion more to police. That's the Biden-Harris plan. And they claim it's for things that are supposed to allegedly, address problems in policing. But it says in there on the website, interesting caveat, that they have to be things that have no proven negative effect on public safety. But the cops think everything that they don't like has a negative effect on public safety. So it's $20 billion more for the cops to do some PR for themselves to make it look like they're doing something when they aren't doing anything at all. And you can see this on so many different levels. You know, I'm going to have X amount of dollars for affordable housing. Biden's saying, I'm going to put so much money in there. It's going to be the housing authorities at the state and local level who take that money and under the guise of mixed income housing and redevelopments, gentrify whole neighborhoods with federal subsidies. That's the way it worked under Obama, under Clinton, under Bush, the way it works now, and the way it will work under Biden. The reality is this: when it comes to policing in and of itself, and when it comes to the broader issue that really undergirds policing, which is the deliberate destruction of the Black working class community in this country and the use of the police as an institution of social control for communities they decided to hollow out to pursue a profit-making agenda of globalized supply chains and Wall Street finance, casino gambling. That these exact policies, that is not going to be addressed with. Biden said to rich people in a Wall Street fundraiser, nothing will fundamentally change. Does anyone here really believe that we can deal with climate change, police brutality, poverty, wealth inequality, ending wars abroad, if nothing fundamentally changes for rich people in corporate America? And do you want to vote for someone who has an investment banker telling the Washington Post that your campaign is telling a meeting of investment bankers, don't worry about our promises? That's just to keep the Warren and the Sanders people happy, but they won't be central to us governing. I mean, at a certain point, we got to ask ourselves, what is really going on in this lesser of two evils? People keep saying it's a lesser of two evils, but the way they keep acting, I mean, they don't do any. I mean, ultimately, I mean, Obama said, I'm going to do a public option in the Employee Free Choice Act. Did not do it. Clinton said he was going to do a lot of things and was one of the most destructive presidents for working class people ever. The welfare reform, the crime bill, the expansion of this free trade regime. It was Jimmy Carter who started to deregulate the major industries and kicked off neoliberalism, if we want to bring that back into the discussion here, and really begin the initial turn into the destruction of many of these communities. So again and again, I feel like we keep hearing that, well, you have to vote for the Democrats because that's how you keep things from getting worse. And things keep getting worse, even when they get in. And even when they're in, they don't even focus on the things that are really that significant. And so, look, obviously there's a challenge in America. And that challenge is the Democrats are not going to do anything to fundamentally change our society, and the society needs fundamental transformative change. So at a certain point, the millions of people who know we need substantial fundamental transformative change have to create a political force that acts independently of the Democrats to fight for our own lives and to fight for the future of the planet and to fight for a sense of humanity, not some sort of crazy post-apocalyptic, sci-fi 2049 landscape, which is where we're headed right now. And I think the stakes are that high. I'm not expecting in the next 45 days for that to become the most popular position. But I think if there aren't some people out here who are really going to just call it all on the carpet and talk about what we really need to do, the scale of the change, and that there are organizations and individuals that are going to build 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 on these issues, regardless of elections. I don't know. To me, I don't know any other way. So that's how I connect that to this. And I think part of the reason why PSL members are at the forefront of this movement is we don't care if the DA is a Democrat. We're not worried about our friends in the legislature looking bad. At the end of the day, we're fighting for justice for Elijah McClain and the victims of all police terror. And we can't be bought off. We can't be pushed to the side. We can't be reasoned with from the point of view of the authorities because we don't want crumbs. We want real justice for people who have been murdered for no reason. And I'm not surprised we're under attack. I mean, I'm not surprised that this is the type of movement that would be scary to the corporate centrist establishment Democrats and the Republicans, and why they might want to go after it because they know we're building for something that ultimately is the type of society where they won't be necessary.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about Jack? Do you have any questions? I have more, but I want to make sure give you a chance to. Oop, you froze. I wanted to know more about. By the way, Lumpia Logic, thank you for the super chat, and I agree. This dude is amped. I agree, and hit the likes. Can you tell us more about what PSL is and why you joined it? A lot of yeah.
And
when it was started, yeah.
Well, we've been around since 2004, so a relatively new group. Some of the people who started PSL have a long history in the communist movement. Most of them, like myself, were young people who had become politicized by the movement against the Iraq War, the anti-globalization movement, the movement against the occupation of Afghanistan, among other things, also the Freeman Mia Abu Jamal and a few other pieces. So, sort of very much a product of the hard to say this, turn of the century kind of uptick in radicalism, as it were. In the most basic sense, we're communist, but we're socialist in the sense that we think that, the cause of our problems is ultimately that everything is about profit and not about what people need or to even what degree people want, but about what you can sell and what you can get people to buy. And that really the difference between that kind of profit-centered and a people-centered system is the root of all our problems. We have to move towards a center that works on, a system that works in favor of the majority of people. That takes the, human, physical, intellectual, material things of society. I mean, we talk about wealth so much, but we don't talk about capabilities, that we have a society that can feed everyone, that can house everyone, that can educate everyone, that can create abundance beyond the ability of people to purchase. And so instead of having a system where a handful of people just manipulate all that to make the maximum amount of money, we should have a system where the majority of people try to figure out collectively, which won't be easy and it'll certainly be messy. And that's why we need socialism, a transitional system, to figure out how do we set things up so that we can actually look at what people need, what people want, and not just like what people need, certainly, and what people want together, and how we use what we have and what we can create to meet people's needs and people's wants, right? Like that's basically communism. And how do you get there is socialism, is figuring it out. So there's a lot of complicated questions. A lot of people say, how would this work? How would that work? It's not my job to figure out how everything works. It's for us to have a collective society where we all can look at these problems and find a way to struggle towards a solution for them together, but where we're not impeded by what we have now, which is that he who has the gold makes the rules society, and that everything that's produced is produced for people to make money and not to actually meet anyone's needs and or wants. And that kind of system means that you can't do the things you need to do to solve the problems that really face humanity. I mean, you think about going to zero energy or zero to 100% clean energy. And I mean, you know, the changes in society to have that kind of massive turnover of the fossil fuel infrastructure, how could you possibly think that wouldn't be deeply disruptive to the profit system? Now, it shouldn't really matter, but it does matter under capitalism, because if you can't make money, people won't do it. You might be able to have double the amount of clean energy you have right now. But if you can't make money off of it, people won't do it, even though it's technically possible. There's more empty homes than homeless people. But why is it that we don't put people in them or in empty hotel rooms? And it's like all of these different things in terms of solving the actual problems when we get down to it. People don't have enough to eat. They don't have a place to live. We're spending too much money going to war overseas, and it's draining the country and destroying it and building a terrible culture around it. The police are killing people. I mean, there's all these basic problems. And unless we go to the root of them, which is ultimately that some people have a lot, other people don't, and the people who do manage society in the most unequal way to maintain that, we're going to have a problem. So from my point of view, or not my point of view, our point of view as the PSL, we think that there's only one way to solve that, and that's to create a group and an organization of people who come from all sorts of working class backgrounds. No disrespect to rich people. I'm sure there are good rich people out there, but the people who really make society run and take that collective experience, at work, at home, in society, intelligence, and find a way and chart a course for how we can convince enough other people who have the same interest as we do about the fact that we not only need a better world, but that it's imminently possible. I mean, I say to people all the time, if your boss doesn't go to work, you still got to go to work. If you all don't show up to work, the business shuts down. And so at the end of the day, the people who make sure the business doesn't actually shut down, that the things it's supposed to be doing, it does, are the people who ultimately should be behind things and should be running things. And we should come together in an organization that fights for that and fights in our own name. And we shouldn't be ashamed of that now, as we've taught to be in America. It's the same reason why working class is considered almost a pejorative. Everyone wants to be middle class because you're supposed to be aspirational and pro-capitalist. You're not supposed to think that workers deserve to have the fruits of their labor determined, what it goes to be determined by them. So in a nutshell, that's PSL. We're a socialist party. We're aiming for communism. We think capitalism doesn't make any sense. And it's no crazier to say you want to have a totally different system than I think to say you're going to run the country into the ground by continuing to pump fossil fuels out of the earth and give all your money to Wall Street.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was asking Jack, I was asking Eugene about PSL when it started and when he got involved in it.
Oh, cool.
And it was started in 2004.
And that's when I also got involved.
Right.
Yes,
He and it started then.
Nice.
Started,
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, this is like, it's a fucking horrendous thing that's going on over there. And, I'm glad that you're kind of like out there raising awareness about it. And yeah, are you ever going to think about running for anything? Because you're a pretty good speaker.
Yes,
I appreciate that. I've done a little bit. Obviously, I've been the vice presidential candidate twice for PSI. I ran for at-large DC council in 2014.
Okay.
Shout out to DC, statehood now. Shout out to all my DC people. That was a great campaign we had there. We talked about a lot of things. I mean, I'm a believer that if it's necessary, if the people want it, I'll fill that role. I mean, I feel I would, want to jump out of a window if I had to work in any legislature anywhere in the country. Having those people as my coworkers would not be that exciting, but I believe in collective activities. So if the collective feels I'm the candidate, I'm more than willing to do it, more than willing to be up for it. There are, to be honest, a lot of fun things about campaigning. You learn tons about what's going on. You talk to a lot of people, and I think that is a deeply gratifying experience.
Yeah.
For anyone who's not even been a candidate, but just campaigned actively. Things like knocking doors that seem like drudgery can really be eye-opening in terms of who's really out there and what's really going on. I love the internet as much as the next guy. I'm obviously on Twitter all the time, but I think you get such a good sense when you get out on a campaign trail of like who like the people are, and you know, people's hot takes are very interesting.
I'm door knocking for Bernie in East Las Vegas. You meet some very interesting. There's some very interesting voter profiles that you wouldn't expect. Like people that have very interesting things and like candidates in certain way. You'd meet like Biden Bernie voters. You'd meet like, you know, people that are like Tulsi, and you know, it was very interesting to meet people. Interesting combinations.
It really is. Like, people are so complicated in a good way, and I think that's like so much of, in a way, what I think I appreciated about Bernie Sanders' campaign was that it was a very good umbrella, because it was about a lot of issues, but it was about less of an issue and more of like a thrust. Like, you know, we're going against the billionaire class. Like, we're, you know, it's you could see the sort of broadly uniting things as much as anything else. And it was remarkably diverse. And of course, that's never reported on. But I mean, it was remarkably diverse. I mean, my mom was a Bernie supporter. So, you know, ultimately, and a strong Democrat at that. So it's not as if Democrats don't support Bernie. But I mean, it really was interesting, I think. And to me, the lasting legacy of the Bernie Sanders campaign, obviously I have many disagreements with Bernie Sanders, but the lasting legacy of the Bernie Sanders campaign is that working class people from all nationalities could come together in millions and millions of people with their own money and actually challenge the most powerful people in the country in a way that was credible. And I think whatever disagreements we may have with Bernie at different times, that was so empowering for so many people, and rightfully so. And I think that's such an important lesson to take from this, is like, you know, I'll say we, I mean, I wasn't like the biggest Bernie Sanders supporter, but let's say we writ large, hundreds of millions of dollars raised for this guy, tens of thousands of volunteers put out into the street, millions of voters contacted, states won. I mean, you know, town halls on universal health care. As someone who's been doing activism since 2002, I never would have believed this. And especially wouldn't have believed it was Bernie Sanders, because no disrespect, but my man was AWOL in the anti-war movement. He was actually not even close to the most active progressive. I never would have expected he would have been the one to cohere this. So you never know. History is full of surprises. And I think his campaign really focused us in on some key facts about politics in this country, that you can unite people in millions across broad differences around a working class agenda and program, and you really can upset the whole world. And that's why he's so hated, ultimately, and why the Bernie movement is so hated, because it was really showing people a new way. And that's very, very dangerous for all these people. The DA, Dave Youngs, who's just the local district attorney version of Nancy Pelosi. The people whose whole gravy train and career is based off this transactional, bipartisan politics that says normal people and average working people don't really matter and are just little pawns on our chessboard as I eat my Talenti ice cream out of my double fridge every night. You know, and shout out to Talenti ice cream. It's good ice cream, but you know.
It is good. Did she eat Talenti? I thought it was a different one.
I thought it was Talenti. It was one of those expensive craft ones.
It was expensive. What's your favorite kind of ice cream, guys?
I mean, is
my
it
favorite
cliche
kind of
if I say
brand,
Ben & Jerry's?
you mean?
Oh, that's your brand. Okay, what flavor? Sorry, I meant what flavor. Yeah, within Ben & Jerry's.
Of course.
What is it?
I mean,
chocolate chip cookie dough.
Is that a Ben & Jerry's one? That's
No, it's not. But I thought you were going for brand, and I was trying to be as, you know.
Pro Bernie. You're trying to play the Bernie. They're trying to play the Bernie card. Yeah. No, Ben & Jerry's. Yeah, chocolate chip cookie dough. Is that? I was just trying to think. Who makes that? Is that's just a?
I mean, I'm sure
there is one that has cookie dough in it. I think it's like
the Tonight
Cookie Dough Tonight Show. No, it's not the Tonight
the
Show.
The Tonight Dough. Is it the Tonight Dough?
There's also the Americone Dream.
That's the Colbert one, right?
Colbert
Which is not very good.
No, it wasn't.
Jimmy Fallon one is better.
They're better. The classics are better.
Like what?
Well, you know, the brand has been bought out by some other brand, so it's the corporate Ben & Jerry's now. Anyway, they've sold out.
Well, all right, I get it.
Tour, you know?
Right. Fish food is another thing of theirs, by the way. It's being someone just put in the chat. That's funny. Right as you said, Fish's last tour.
There it
someone
is.
Put
Cherry
it.
Garcia.
Yeah. Cherry Garcia.
Great state, I want to say. Gloria the Revo on the ballot in Vermont. Great state, though. Good ice cream and other many fantastic place. Great.
Didn't like I think Matt Taibbi told me the story about how Bernie Sanders like visited like a Soviet. So
Yeah, he was in
that?
a citizen to citizen initiative in '89. It's actually an interesting story, even though he was completely smeared for it. I believe it was a part of one of the CCI initiatives, which was a basically citizen diplomacy, and it was this very like Rotary Club style thing where they would try to get small town mayors, people
Right.
like Bernie Sanders. They would have business delegations, local politicians, and they would go to the Soviet Union and vice versa, with the concept being that, if you really wanted to break down the diplomatic challenges, it had to be not just from the top down summit diplomacy, but sort of bottom up grassroots diplomacy. So as Bernie himself pointed out, they had Republicans on this trip and other things. And these are programs that at the time were widely lauded by many people around the country because, we forget now, but, these are two countries that were perpetually on the brink of nuclear war. And this was a creative initiative to try to bring people together and to lessen the opportunity for nuclear war. So, yeah, it was allegedly Bernie's honeymoon, although I think those two things may have just coincided. But, yeah, he was leading as the mayor of Burlington, a citizen-to-citizen diplomacy delegation that was politically very diverse. And not like a communist ploy. Not that would be a problem.
No, of course, yeah.
But I mean, it's definitely
a girl can dream, right?
Yeah. He's being deliberately misrepresented. I mean, listen, Bernie doesn't come. I mean, this is real left sectariana now. I don't know. Maybe your New York friends and relatives would appreciate this, but Bernie is from the quote unquote Yipsel milieu, the late Socialist Party. The early 1960s, that was very hostile to the Soviet Union and very hostile to CP politics, and in many ways hostile to the anti-war movement, but I won't go there. A very different politics than sort of what people would consider communist politics and the lineage of the Communist Party, certainly in the anti-war movement. Maybe to a lesser extent in the civil rights movement where there was more overlap because of Bayard Rustin and other people from a similar current there, but a totally different lineage. But of course, that doesn't matter at all to the right wing. That only matters to like people like myself, leftist train spotters, and all, flavors of Marxists, because we're always very concerned about, what other people are saying who claim to agree with us. So yeah, but it's a pet peeve of mine because it's obviously not his lineage. If you're going to attack someone, attack them for the right thing. Not the wrong thing. Obviously, that was a very positive initiative on his part. And many, many people, Republicans, whatever, went on these trips.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing to look into. And something that would be very useful now, I think, for countries like China, Russia, Venezuela, Iran. And I'll give due credit to Code Pink for organizing a number of delegations, North Korea as well, citizen-to-citizen delegations to reduce the war danger with these countries we're supposed to demonize.
Yeah, I'm looking for. There was something that was Ben and Jerry's based, but I think it was he was trying to. I have to find it, but it was something with Ben and Jerry's, Bernie Sanders, and the Soviet Union. I'll have to find it.
Well, I hope Ben and Jerry's was somehow involved with the Soviet Union. That honestly would probably make my day.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I don't know if there's any possibility of that though. You never know. You never know who's affiliated with the Soviet Union.
Yeah. So, okay, chocolate chip cookie dough. Jack, what's yours?
I like a chocolate chip cookie dough too. I like one with like a peanut butter in there. It depends on if we're going to a soft serve place. I mean, this is very, very situational. This is all very situational.
You're right.
If you really want to get into ice cream, I'll have to go down a number of options here. But yeah, it's if it's a soft serve, I might like to do a mix between a vanilla and a chocolate. But
sure, classic,
a specialty ice cream place. Yeah, I'll walk around with like cookies and cream or like a cookie dough or something like that.
Okay.
I used to work at Maggie Moo's. I don't even know if that changes.
I don't know that.
Ice cream. It's like Cold Stone Creamery, but you don't sing. Wow. You definitely don't sing. I
didn't know they were singing Cold Stone.
Yeah, if you tip people, they have to sing. It's like borderline slavery. It's unbelievable.
That is awful.
So people would always come into Maggie Moo's and be like, "Do you guys sing?" And we'd be like, "Nope, we sure don't." Wow. But yeah, you learn a lot about people. Really, ice cream is people really are all about their ice cream. I'll tell you that. It's a guilty pleasure for sure.
I've been to Fetish Magic Rights, go to Tepoztlan, Mexico, ice cream capital of the world. I've been there like 3 times and I didn't know that. So that's upsetting because I've been there. Moose Tracks, I do like Moose Tracks.
Mexico City. Where is that?
Yeah, it's not that far from Mexico City.
I will go there. I love Mexico City. Great place.
I mean, if we can ever fly again.
That's true.
Yeah, mint chocolate chip is good too.
Yes, mint chocolate chip for sure. Reminds me of Thin Mint cookies.
Yes, that's actually very good.
Which
Perry's
is definitely the best Girl Scout cookie.
I mean, there's like no I don't even know. Does anyone actually have to think about that?
Yes, there. I mean, the one
I
that
like a Samoa. I like a
I knew it.
Samoa.
I
I'll
was
have
gonna
a
say that.
Samoa.
Yeah, that's the
Samoa
one.
gets so
I
many
like both.
votes. I don't
I
like
go-
it's not good.
I get both when they're both there. I get the Samoas and the Thin Mints. You put the Thin Mints in the freezer.
If you could
and have
only
the
buy
Samoas
one,
out.
though, if you could only buy one.
That's not the case for me.
But I'm saying
able
if
to
you
buy
could, if
two.
you only had
Jack is
one.
I'm an
supporting the
adult.
young girls
I'm an
of Girl
adult.
Scouts of America. He's not going to
I'm
get
an adult, and I'm allowed to spend my $5 bills
what
how I
if
like
you
to do.
only right, but what if you only had whatever one thing, whatever the cost of one of those is?
I would take the Thin Mint because my wife
Thank you.
also likes them.
Oh.
Mm.
But let's
there
say
it
your
is.
wife were gone. We're not.
but I would
We're visiting her family.
I would probably find an ATM, to be honest with you.
Yes.
to get
You
more
are
money.
you are a cat. You are a cookie. You are a Girl Scout cookies coward. You
I like.
won't commit.
Oh,
I don't know if that's true. You need to buy more than one. But are you supporting the girls, or are you satiating your own desires? I mean, you have to
Right.
buy as many boxes of
I
cookies as
see.
you can.
Yeah, if you want to support these girls, I support girls. I support women, and
Boys, men, anything.
Girl Scouts of
anything in between,
America.
yeah.
I'm a fan of the Girl Scouts of America. I'm not
Yeah.
going to talk down on them.
Yeah.
They used to, back in the day, make those cookies in Richmond, Virginia. As a
Oh, wow.
native of Charlottesville, Virginia, I will take credit for that. Virginians, we take credit for all things of the great Commonwealth.
Right. Who do you think
Those
should
Dominion States.
replace the Robert E. Lee statue? By the way,
Which one?
oh, the one in Virginia
Richmond.
was that? And yeah,
The one in Richmond on Monument
yeah.
Avenue?
Sorry, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a case to be made that maybe you shouldn't have another statue in its place. I mean, there's a logical case to be made since Arthur Ashe is already there on Monument Avenue, and that was a big anti-racist struggle to get Arthur Ashe on Monument Avenue. There's a case to be made that maybe moving him to center stage is logical historically, but I think his politics in some ways were a little shaky on South Africa. God, I hate to really hate on Arthur Ashe.
Was he? You're going to hate on Arthur Ashe?
I'm not hating on Arthur Ashe in any way, shape, or
Wait,
form.
was he not? Was he not? By
Well,
the way,
he played in South
Let's
Africa.
keep talking about ice cream now.
He criticized apartheid, but he did play in South Africa. But then he boycotted, I think, towards the end. But it happens. Look, I'm not hating on Arthur Ashe. I'm saying historically for Richmond, there's a very good case for him to actually be the centerpiece statue. I mean, I think there's other people. Are you going just Richmond history? The whole state of George Washington Carver is from Buckingham County. A great figure in Black history, totally unsung, sadly.
Right.
Certainly a Virginian could be there. You could make a case for, I think, Gabriel Prosser. One of the great slave rebellions in Richmond, but obviously that's a whole other thing. But if you want to go the other way and show that the opposition to slavery was the valiant thing, you could go that way. But I think there's also a case to be made for
Allen Iverson.
Allen Iverson's from Hampton. I'm not necessarily saying that it's inappropriate to have someone from Hampton in Richmond, but I feel like I love Allen Iverson. I would prefer to see that in Hampton somewhere. And given the history of the racist charge he took and everything like that, it'd probably be more meaningful for it to be there.
I didn't even know about that. I just knew he was from Virginia.
Yeah, he's from Hampton, Virginia. When he was in high school, there was a fight at a bowling alley. And, these racists basically tried to say that him and some other guys had started it, and he was arrested. There was like a whole kind of legal case or whatever. Ultimately, thankfully, he was not convicted of any crime, but it was kind of like a racist frame up of Black youth. And, it hurt a lot of his capabilities for going to college. And then ultimately he ends up at Georgetown because the late John Thompson, who just recently passed, of course, felt that he was a great player and a good person and that he could bring him in and some of the great Georgetown teams there for sure with Allen Iverson. So, I think Allen Iverson is an interesting cultural figure. I don't know how we're on this now, but I love AI. You look at basketball now, everyone's watching the NBA, great playoffs so far, no disrespect for it. The tattoos, the long shorts, the different headgear, none of that would be happening if it was not for Allen Iverson, who was called a thug. They said that he was the worst. He was just a gangster rapper, all these different things. But he normalized and mainstreamed the ability to have Black cultural expression in a real way in the NBA, that LeBron James and all these guys, the way they look and the way they dress in the context of the league. It was sea change. And some people will put some of it to Dennis Rodman, and I give him some credit on the tattoo end. But Dennis Rodman, who was one of the greatest marketers of all time, was sui generis. He was not really representing the sort of hip hop strain of black culture that the NBA was deadly afraid of really embracing in the early 2000s. And it was a battle back and forth. You can think of so many different things that happened, so many different players who emerged around that time. A real battle back and forth between the sort of like straight lace, short shorts era and the sort of more hip hop and black cultural influence era of Allen Iverson. So very political, even though it's sports.
Did not even know that. Wow.
What's my team? I mean, God, Wiz Kids, of course, overall. I mean, I'm a Washington, D.C. guy. But right now in the playoffs, I mean, I could go either way with any of these teams, honestly. I don't really love any of these teams. I mean, I like the way – I don't know. I like how some teams are playing, but honestly, I just want to see good games. At this point, I could care less about any of these teams. I hate to say it, but I have my own dislikes of them. I like the Nuggets' heart, though. So maybe I would most like to see the Nuggets – because I like the heart of them to make it this far when people didn't expect it. And I like to see that kind of thing. I'm as big into college sports, so I like kind of Cinderella stories, even though I guess you can't really say anyone's a Cinderella in the NBA, but whatever. Anyway, not to get too far afield on that. Allen Iverson, great person. Yes, anywhere there. Could be. So there's a lot of people you could put on there, but I think there's a case to be made that the whole statue culture should be rethought.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for remembering our history and honoring our history, but there's always so much more to history than just individuals.
Right.
And so there's many statues I like. There's a great statue in Martinique of one of the great slave uprisings there of one of the leaders. Their name is eluding me. She was pregnant, so it's this beautiful image of this pregnant woman leading the slave rebellion. So, but in and of itself, I don't know. I think there's probably better and more interesting ways that we can know and learn our history. I think the sort of hero worship reality of this statue culture maybe should be rethought. But yeah, obviously it should be somebody, if it's going to be anything, related to anti-racist struggle, I think, on Monument Avenue. Given the history, it's hard to understand if you're not really from Virginia and you don't know the impact of Monument. But, I was in the Stonewall Jackson Council of the Boy Scouts. Obviously, Charlottesville was the center of everything in terms of, Lee Park and that being an issue. Every single courthouse, Confederate soldier, everything everywhere is Confederacy all the time. And Monument Avenue is just this massive avenue with these roundabouts, with these giant – it's like Berlin with these big roundabouts and these giant statues of Jeb Stuart and Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and all these other people. And it's the message it sends is unbelievable, especially in places like Richmond that are majority black. So ultimately, Jefferson Davis Middle School, Jefferson Davis Highway. I mean, everything is a celebration of some slave owner. Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, James Madison. So ultimately, this coming down, I think, is huge. I never would have believed in my lifetime Monument Avenue could have been even talked about being brought down. So whatever replaces it should at least represent that. But in some ways, I'd rather them replace it with nothing as a statue, maybe just a beautiful landscape. Some good use of green space and green area for community gathering.
I think that maybe I was suggesting maybe some Pokemon statues like they have in Japan. I think that's kind of something that could offend nobody. Everybody has a favorite Pokemon. We can start putting up Pokemons.
It'd be good for trade relations with Japan.
Yeah,
it would. Richmond to Tokyo, you could make something happen.
Yeah, you could.
I just got to push back a little bit on WT serves because Arthur Ashe, he did play tennis, and he writes, but he did not make a mark outside Wimbledon. He kind of did with AIDS, though. I'm going to push back on that. Like, that was, I think, a kind of big deal. I don't know if people remember that.
It's huge. Only a certain vintage of us will remember that. Tragically, given in a blood transfusion, because they weren't checking the blood. But yeah, obviously one of the great athletes of his time.
Not that it wouldn't have been tragic if he had gotten it out another way.
Of course. But speak to the whole concept of that AIDS was just gay people, or Haitians, or whatever. As people, we talk about COVID-19, which obviously is terrible, but I mean, it is worth remembering how hundreds of thousands of people, tens of thousands of people just sacrificed in the HIV/AIDS crisis by, the right-wing religious leadership of the country.
Right. So, yeah. So he was out. I mean, he was public about that, which maybe doesn't sound like a big deal now, but was then.
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, even what was it? 3-4 years after that Magic Johnson, that was 89, 87, or something like that. And then Magic Johnson was 91, 92.
Yeah.
And that was like the world had ended.
Yeah, that was harder, I think, because that wasn't like, again, none of this should matter, but that wasn't a transfusion, so that was a harder thing to.
Magic Johnson, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
he was Magic Johnson, and all of a sudden,
Yeah,
there's consequences for
right.
your actions.
Right. But anything else that people want to talk about? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the elections. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
Oh, this Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing, it's like, oh boy, this is something that felt fairly predictable. I think that they're going to get somebody through before the end of this year. I don't think it's going to be, I think they might still wait till after the election because it's going to be something that's really going to motivate, the evangelicals. I think it's easier to get people to vote because they want to change something they don't like than it is to get people to change to like, or to vote to protect the status quo that exists. You know what I mean? So even as much as people are fired up about this as liberals, like, I just don't think it's as easy to motivate people to be like, get out there and vote to keep things the way they are as it is for evangelicals when it's like, you hate abortion. This is the shot. This is the one big shot. You know what I mean? Like, but either way, I think like if Biden wins, they're just going to get it done before the end of the year. And like, even talking about that Mitch McConnell is a hypocrite is like pointless to me because like that is why he's the successful politician. Like that's why they like him is because he takes on massive personal and political liability to like just get them gains at any cost, so it's a fucking disaster. It's a predictable disaster. And what I think is going to be interesting is if the Democrats are forced to start talking about packing the courts. I was shocked to see Chuck Schumer even today being like, we might have to talk about other things. I'm like, this could get really, really nasty, and that's gonna be a lot of that's gonna be very difficult for all the for them to win the Senate if we're gonna start talking about court packing and shit. Like it's just this election's about to get really, really messy, I think.
Yeah, I would say two things about the RBG thing. I mean, one, I hope people really remember and look up and study Pauli Murray, who's been completely forgotten in history. One of the great really black trans people in history, known as a black woman, but obviously was one of Anyway, research it. You'll find out for yourself. But, who argued some of the key cases, including, I believe it was White v. Crook, that said that women can serve equally on juries, that laid the groundwork for Ruth Bader Ginsburg's work. Of course, she made them the co-author of, her famous paper around, I believe, applying the Equal Protection Clause to women's rights because of this pioneering work. She's been lost to history. She was also the first ordained woman in the Episcopal Church, major member of the NAACP, the Civil Rights Movement in the 1940s. So Pauli with an I, Pauli, Pauli Murray. Please research her. Please check her out. We're going to talk about liberal white women all day. No disrespect to the dead, but I think we have to be realistic about who we're forgetting here. And like we're saying, who's responsible. RBG also said that the NFL players were stupid for protesting. She said Brett Kavanaugh is a great guy. So I don't want to take away and be like, I hate to speak ill of the dead. I'm not that guy. I guess I am, so I just did it.
Kind of are.
I am a little.
Yeah, I feel, but someone has to actually put some of this out there because I think it is important, the kind of liberal hagiography that you get where you can remember John Lewis as the greatest person ever, but Bill Clinton can defame Kwame Ture, one of the greatest strugglers in the history of the Black liberation movement, and people think it's okay. And so if we're going to mention RBG, we also have to mention, the other people who were struggling, who have been forgotten and wiped away by history for many of the same things, for obvious reasons that, are embarrassing now. So, I think in terms of the election piece of it, to me, it's a coin flip who it really helps. I agree with Jack. I think they're going to get this thing in before the election. I mean, the optics of it are worse in the lame duck, quite frankly. There might be more Republicans willing to defect, I think, in that sense, knowing that Trump is on his way out. And, if you want influence in government, horse trading is the order of the day. And I think there's plenty of Republicans knowing Trump is leaving who'd be more than happy not to vote on the person to preserve their positioning with the new president coming in. I think, obviously, it seems very clear, looking at right-wing media, listening to what the pro-life groups are saying, the other evangelical groups, that they are putting on a full court press to go now before it's too late, with someone who I think they feel, that I'm just quoting their words, what they're saying, they think makes the contrast for why Trump should be the president. I think it does definitely help turn out on both sides, which is why I think it could end up being a wash. I mean, I think the problem for Democrats is what is their alternative, really? I mean, we're hearing a little bit about court packing, but Biden says he doesn't want to go there. So how realistic is that? I think we're hearing some about, well, Biden should put out his own list of people to motivate people. Is the quote unquote left really motivated by Supreme Court justices in the same way? I mean, as I pointed out many, many times, the Supreme Court is usually responsive to the mood of the country. And when things are moving, as I pointed out, the so-called Warren Court, the most liberal court in the history of modern jurisprudence, was led by a guy who, when he was the governor of California, was a member of white supremacist organizations and oversaw a eugenics program that was sterilizing Chicana women coming into public hospitals. So, I mean, who knew? But he passed Brown v. the Board of Education and, Gideon v. Wainwright, the right to have a lawyer, all these different things that are out there that were done because obviously it was the mood and the tenor and the terms of the time. And the court started turning more reactionary when the country started turning more reactionary, when Berger came in. So, ultimately, I don't know if it has the same effect in terms of galvanizing people. I think the voters that Biden needs that care about this were already going to vote for Joe Biden. The people he needs, the people who didn't vote in 2016 but voted in 2012 for Obama, probably could care less about this. They're going to be overwhelmingly working class people of color, overwhelmingly young working class people of color, but certainly overwhelmingly people who are disaffected from the political system to a high degree and do not vote consistently, if at all. And I doubt the Supreme Court will motivate them. So, in some ways it helps keep enthusiasm up for Biden, which I think is good for him. But I don't know. To me, it seems like it's a net favorable to the Republicans, and that them being able to push through someone will fire up the Republican base and make them feel like, hell yeah, this is what we were doing it for. But I don't know. I could be wrong about that.
And
but that's what I think.
Also, by the way, that is exactly what happened in the last election with Trump.
Right.
Is that people felt like kind of weird about how he's uncouth or whatever, but then they really made a hardcore Supreme Court argument, and it absolutely worked last time. And I think they can pull it off again. And maybe Trump will even just you're saying, he'll just do it, and then everyone will reward him.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the best articles I've read so far about the election, Karl Rove a few months back wrote something in the Wall Street Journal, and he said this Biden's election strategy, it's like the old school four corners offense in basketball, which, to go back to basketball, before there was a shot clock, it's a famous style of offense that the North Carolina Central University, a black school, made famous, which is basically when you're up, just pass the ball around the lot and try to keep possession of the ball as much as possible so that the other team can't come back. But the biggest danger in a four-corner offense is, since you're passing the ball around, it increases the opportunity for a steal, which of course will give them the ball, score, but turn the momentum around and change the dynamic. And I think this is the challenge. My general feeling is the election is trending towards Biden. I think that the voter universe of people Biden needs to show up, I think there's a better chance of those people showing up than the voter universe Trump needs, because he's playing such a narrow game. Trump needs non-voters who almost never vote. Biden needs, inconsistent voters who sometimes vote. I think a lot of different things favor him, but I do think it's like with the RBG thing, with any number of things, there's a chance for Trump really to get a steal at the last second. And I think the Biden campaign is so fragile and so based on lowest common denominator, I'm just not Trump, that he will not be able to adapt to any sort of real October surprise. I think this is the first one. And I think, what if Trump just strong arms Republicans to give people like $1,000 a month or something? I mean, he's already banned evictions. You know what I mean? And he's going to keep doing things. And people aren't paying attention to this. They're trying to end the war in Afghanistan right now, and they might succeed. And if he can withdraw all U.S. troops from Afghanistan before the election, he's servicing a lot of constituencies in that kind of steel zone that I don't know if it will – you can't necessarily hang your hat on it, but it easily, I think, could wrong foot Biden, because I don't think he can take any fragility here. And I think we've already seen with Kenosha, with the RBG, that he gets a little off kilter when anything rapid happens, because his campaign is so brittle and built on so little.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think, it's a definitely it's a hairy situation, this election.
Yes.
It's a hairy situation that we,
and we're not even going to know who wins on election day. So in a way, what happens after the vote could be as important. I mean, I think people are not talking enough about this. I think people got to start researching this transition integrity project wargaming. It came up in the Ben Smith article about how in the New York Times about how the major newspapers are going to cover the election. It came up recently in some article I saw about, like mainstream groups preparing for, the post-election analysis. That might have also been in the Times. But, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but the war games that they've been playing have been very extreme from the point of view of, U.S. politics. I mean, basically that, of course, Trump will do anything to declare victory. But even the Biden side trying to do things like threatening to have, all Democratic states secede unless there isn't a certification of the Electoral College, or pressuring Democratic governors to pressure electors to not vote for the majority vote winner, but or to vote for the electoral winner of the state, but to vote for, the Democrats or whoever it may be. The possibility of the military getting involved. The idea of mass protests to try to force Trump out. The idea, of course, of Trump mobilizing paramilitaries. I mean, both sides in the election have already built in a huge narrative that the other side is completely illegitimate. Like, no matter what happens, a subset of Democrats are going to think Trump stole the election, either because of the post office or Russia or both. And no matter what happens, a significant chunk of Trump voters are going to believe that Democrats stole the election with illegal ballots from immigrants. I mean, that'll undoubtedly be the message. And, then you're going to have the red mirage effect, which is obviously real. You look at every poll, the majority of Republicans saying they're going to vote in person, the majority of Democrats are saying they're going to vote by mail. So for sure, on election night, it's going to look like Trump won.
Right.
And how knows?
Samuel Moyne is going to vote in person, by the way. Everyone should know. The law professor we interviewed on
No, of course. The human rights guy.
Yeah.
That human rights are not real or whatever. That's a simplification of his argument, but very good argument, I think, on the vicissitudes of that concept.
And he had the chutzpah to say, in a good way, that she should have retired in 2013 when I had him on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously true. I mean, listen, the person who wrote the Notorious RBG, I hate to rip this person, who's a very nice person. I've met her in person multiple times. Very good person. But she shared the inscription RBG did of the book, Notorious RBG, and she said, you helped make this persona that many others, including myself, enjoyed. Like all people, she's human. She liked to be famous and important and relevant. And the reality is, why retire? You don't have to. And then you lose all relevance. Are there any Supreme Court justices who retired who are still alive that anyone remembers when they were alive, when they were? I mean, it only matters when you're there and when you're dead. That's only the time. And so ultimately, these people don't pursue these positions because they want to do the right thing. They do it because they want to be powerful and famous and known. And I feel like we do such a disservice to ourselves by acting as if the normal human emotions don't apply to these people and constructing these hero conflicts. No one who wants to be a hero that changes the world becomes a Supreme Court justice. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's Actually, Sam called it an almost Kremlinological attitude towards the Supreme Court, where people you're like, oh, it's amazing how Scalia and what's her name would go to the theater together for opera. Yeah, that's his other point. He was like, why do we give this council so much power?
I mean, that's the interesting thing about the court packing, because you'll remember, I'm sure, Katie, because you're a big fan of his, that Pete Buttigieg was making a huge, that was his substitute for being like a liberal, centrist, neoliberal, with no platform that anyone would ever want to support, was this faux radicalism of like, we're going to pack the court, we're going to get rid of the filibuster and all these little like different pieces. But I say all that just to say there could be real kind of groundswell from like the Upper West Side wine crew for tough
kind of me, but
tactics here. Well, you've been adopted by the better crew. People who also like wine but don't live on the Upper West. No disrespect to the Upper West Side.
I'm from the Upper West Side, but I don't live there anymore. But
I mean, it's a nice place to walk around in. No doubt about that. You take a little nice stroll there. But be that as it may, there may be like more. I mean, this is the challenge of the Democrats, is that they're not united at all. And that you've got multiple factions of centrists who think that they have a better way to run the country in the ground with, bullshit third way politics. And then you have like actual human beings that want to do something and help people. But they're the most marginalized force in the party. And, that the center can't hold. That's the other thing to me about the Sanders. I mean, honestly, like if there was any chance, I'm sorry, I know people are going to disagree with this. If there was any real chance the Democratic Party was a transformative vehicle, they would have let Bernie Sanders win this time around. I mean,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? If you look at what's happening right now, if you have Bernie Sanders in there, no, I mean, I'm telling, and it's not even what people expect. Bernie Sanders would be on the verge of winning this race right now, I guarantee you, because he would be getting the largest vote of Black Americans to ever vote in the history of the United States. And I'll tell you why, because when the uprising kicked off, there's only one way Bernie could have leaned, and that's in. Because any leaning back, the left-wing criticism of him for not being good on race, I think, would destroy his opportunities to succeed. He has no traditional base in the Black community, and thus he can't rely, as say someone like Biden or someone like that, on, well, you know me, I've been around for whatever, I was Obama's vice president. So the only way to keep this core base would be to lean in 100%. You know, most of his surrogates would be out there, you know, and we're out there, you know, ripping the police, ripping the Democrats. And I think that in that moment where we saw that the reason Biden is winning, look at how the polls trended, is Trump came, he attacked the protesters in Lafayette Park, he outraged the country, millions of people came into the streets around the country in huge numbers, and it changed the whole political calculus. Now imagine if instead of Biden hiding in his random Delaware basement talking about most cops are good and are you not Black if you don't vote for me and all this kind of crazy shit he's talking about, if he had been out there talking about, defund the police, fund the end poverty in America, have good, strong working class jobs with union protections, you know, hold killer cops accountable, I believe that he would have gotten such a response. I truly believe that it could have been, no one would have expected it, but I believe it would have happened. I do believe it would have happened, and I think it would have been sort of a wild card that no one would have expected from Bernie, but I think Black people who vote and others would have rallied in a huge way, an unprecedented way. Not that that's the only reason he would win, but in an unprecedented way, because he would have leaned into the moment in a way that was 100% relevant to what people were feeling at that time. But instead, you had this sad echo of a human hiding in a basement in Delaware, barely able to read off of a teleprompter, unsure of what he really wants to say because he's responsible for mass incarceration and has refused to apologize for it, who's insulting every Black radio host he's on with, who is completely alienating every Black person under the age of 40 years old. I mean, it's you couldn't have had a worse candidate at this moment. You really couldn't have. Any other Democrat would have actually, I think, except Michael Bloomberg, I think would have actually gotten more out of this moment and really not just been 8 points ahead like the Wall Street Journal has, but 12 or 15 points ahead, because Trump's politics are minoritarian, 100%. And it depends on the apathy of people who don't agree, because the Democrats are so bad that, I mean, that's why Obama had this unprecedented vote, because whatever we want to say about Obama, and I'm sorry to go on and on about this, but whatever we want to say, his politics were people-centered and they were hope-driven. You as a person can make a difference in society if you take this collective action with millions of other people. That was it, hope and change. You got to believe it can happen and you can make it happen. And I think that made a lot of people feel like, hell yeah. And this is transformative. America is racist as shit. If you could get a Black president in there, you could probably do a lot of shit. And I think people could believe in that. Now, Obama, he abused that privilege and didn't do as much as we wanted him to do, but certainly, I think, condescended to his own supporters, quite frankly, which is why they didn't show up the next go-round. And Hillary, look at her. But I think ultimately, it's unfortunate in many ways that there's no politician that is in the mainstream of politics that in any way, shape, or form supports the millions of people came out under the slogan defund the police. Most people can generally agree. When you say defund the police, it's not popular in polling. But then when you say replace some money and some policing with like social services and eliminating poverty, it's very popular. So, you know, the concept is more popular than the phrase, but you don't have one major politician in Congress or on the campaign trail willing to even broach the issue. And Biden, who's asking for your votes, is saying he's going to give $20 billion more dollars to cops. $20 billion.
And how much more to the Pentagon?
Well, he's saying now that he can't. They're not 100% sure what they'll do at the Pentagon, but they're not expecting any major reductions. Okay. But you know, there's always all these different questions. But it's going to be more. Ultimately, because Biden has no plan also to end the emergency appropriations. He wants to keep the Afghanistan war going. He wants to keep troops in Syria. He wants to keep troops in Iraq. He wants to keep troops in Korea. He said absolutely nothing about AFRICOM, which means he wants to keep troops in Africa. Under the guise of this small footprint counterterrorism, they've got 119 bases all over the world. It's tens of thousands of troops that are destroying people's lives with these night raids and, militarizing these countries. You look at Mali. Why is Mali in such an uproar? Mali's in such an uproar because the government there is taking all this security money and all these weapons and all these drones from France, the US, and Germany, and they're committing massive human rights abuses on the people of the north of Mali under the guise of counterterrorism. And rather than consider the real issues that exist for people in the Sahel, the Tuareg people and others, issues of self-determination, people's right to freedom and to live, and how, people should be governed, we just lump it under terrorism. We give some tin-pot dictator a bunch of money, a bunch of guns, and a bunch of planes, and they, use it to repress their own people who are making legitimate claims, and then people get angry and they fight back, and it becomes a feedback loop because they say, well, look at all these people, they just keep becoming terrorists, and we're causing the problems. We're not over there solving them or resolving them. And Biden has not, except for Iran, where I will say he wants to roll back, Biden has been for increases in NATO, more aggressive posture towards China, towards Russia. Biden is moving us closer to war. I mean, Trump is doing the same thing in a way, but he doesn't have the same doctrine around it. Biden has that same neocon doctrine that he's always had, and that this country is run by, and he wants to return to it. And, they'll make a show of this, that, and the third. He'll say something negative about Erdogan or whatever to make you think he's, for, I don't know, something. But the reality is there's going to be even more wars under Biden, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you think, and then I want to answer what will the left do under the Biden presidency, but related to that, you think that you think Biden will be worse in terms of in terms of foreign policy than Trump?
I think it's hard to parse. I think that on balance, probably, I think that Trump wants to get out of Afghanistan. Biden seems to want to stay. Trump is going full court press on Iran. Biden wants to row back on Iran. They're the same on Venezuela. There may be some institutional inertia coming from the Obama people coming back under Biden on Cuba. Obviously on China, they're just as aggressive. Biden is more aggressive on Russia, on NATO. It's scales of justice. I think Trump is more committed to drawing back U.S. military presence as a matter of policy, because I think there's a strain of right-wing thought in America that's all about, nuking the hell out of anyone who attacks you, but is very isolationist. And I think Trump taps into that isolationist right-wing strain, which is not progressive, but it's why he will consider things that are obvious, like remove all U.S. troops from Korea and facilitate the reconciliation of the Korean Peninsula, which, by the way, the South Korean people want. Biden says, and he said in multiple things, that he's against our allies. Trump's against our allies in South Korea. That's a blatant lie. President Moon, whose party has a supermajority in the legislature, who is a major proponent of peace talks, a peace treaty, and ultimately reconciliation and unification on the Korean Peninsula, is 100% behind, is actually really the person pushing Trump's policy, because you'll note the second Vietnam summit only came after the national security advisor of South Korea secretly flew to the United States, went to the White House, and they convinced Trump that he should come out and that they should meet again with Kim Jong-un. So, ultimately, the Democrats are promoting the most right-wing elements of South Korean society. Very dangerous there. Also Japan as well. So, I think Trump is not committed to that as many things, but he's also so committed to this bellicose authority. The chances of Trump blundering into a war, I think, are greater. I think the chances of Biden being consistently more warmongering is probably the case, but also Trump is, and in a way, a very dangerous way, because it's so unpredictable. It means that, you do things that create reactions that are negative. So I think it's a wash. I don't think Trump is some anti-war president, but I do think for the average voter who cares about ending endless wars, as Trump puts it, it's a powerful lever in Trump's part. And if he can remove American troops from Afghanistan, which Obama said he would do in 2 terms and did not really do, well, he didn't say it the first term, said it the second time, didn't really do, Trump hasn't done so far, I think a lot of people will respond to that. I think that would be perceived as a major accomplishment in moving America off a permanent war footing.
Yeah. And I actually wanted to just look at who was the person's name who you mentioned with Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
Pauli Murray, Pauli. So Pauli with an I, Pauli.
Murray, okay.
Murray, Murray. Very, very interesting woman. She coined the term Jane Crow.
Wow.
To talk about gender and sex discrimination. But, a trans person who, went through a lot of struggles at a time where that was not in any way, shape, or form accepted by anyone. Like I said, the first woman, I believe, to be ordained as a minister in the Episcopal Church, a law professor, a lawyer herself, a civil rights activist.
I'd never heard of her.
Wow. One of the most accomplished people, I think, to be out there. Worked very closely with Thurgood Marshall and others at that time. I'll also note for my people here, as a graduate of Howard University, she is a graduate, I believe, of Howard University Law School. So, a number of very interesting things in her life and in her background that I think are very much looking into. So Pauli Murray.
Wow. Yeah. I'd never heard of her. Really cool. Great. And then what the left is going to do under Biden? I mean, I assume not in a revolt. I guess that was my question, though, about what's going to be worse, Biden or Trump for the left, for the world in general. But it seems like maybe it's kind of a...
Yeah, I think a lot of the same trends are going to continue. I mean, I think that there will be a group of people that will want to be Biden loyalist, as there were, in, say, the Clinton and Obama administrations. I think the difference is there's a much larger group of people who kind of don't care and are, down to fight on the issues and the causes, not on who the president is. So I suspect most of the trends of radicalization to the left and to the right to continue, because the centrist Biden presidency can't really resolve problems. And so no matter what they do, they're guaranteed to push on the various trends in society that are radicalizing people, right? I mean, either the gap between what's necessary and what they do on the left, or the gap between the rhetoric of a centrist Democratic administration and the worldview of a far right base that's motivated by a very, sort of paranoid view of losing something. I think both of those things will increase, the trends will increase, and I think that we're moving towards more fractious living. I think they'll see, so for the left, I think we'll see more strikes. I think we'll see growing and stronger unions. I think we'll see more attempts to organize and battle in unions. We'll see more protests on the street. I think we'll see more militant, nonviolent civil disobedience. I think on both the right and the left, the growth of armed groups will continue as the sort of broader political system phrase. I think the police will become more openly fascistic and more defiant of the local political authorities, which is already happening now. I mean, you look at Portland, where the mayor is allegedly the head of the Portland police, or Seattle, it was very clear that they were putting out these bans on this, that, and the third, and the cops just didn't even care. So I think a lot of these things that we're seeing, people think, oh, we're going to vote and it's going to be over. No, it's going to keep going. It'll happen in different ways, but I don't think we're going back to any sense of normalcy or quiet or anything like that. I think it could be there'll be less liberals. There'll be more liberals who will not be committed to fighting the government. But I just think there's going to be many, many more millions that are going to be fighting them too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with some of this foreign policy stuff, frankly, I think that Trump and Biden are going to have the same people advising them, and that, when you're a neoliberal, you can get away with more of that shit, and it's like you can just push it through more easily. So I kind of am of the same mind that it's possible that think that foreign policy can be worse, except that, like as you mentioned, Trump's out of his mind. So he might just get mad at Iran or something and be like, we're going to use nukes, folks. It's finally time, everybody. It's not that good to have an irrational person as the president.
And these right-wing evangelicals like Mike Pompeo, they're millenarians. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They think in terms of the end times. So a lot of us think nuclear war with an enemy, with China or Russia, that sounds terrible, because that sounds like the destruction of humanity. But when you already kind of expect the destruction of humanity in an existential battle of good and evil, and you think you are good, I mean, I think that's not Jeff Sachs, it's not an original idea. I mean, Jeff Sachs was saying this about Mike Pompeo. Listen, I'm a Marxist, so I trend a little bit more towards the material, but I think there's something to be said about that, about who a lot of these people around Trump are, and the kind of end times stuff that really motivates them in life, and what that means about how they value life and death and the possibility of war and peace. So I think it's dangerous both ways. You got totally insane people that maybe are a little bit more isolationist but will attack anyone. And then you've just got rank imperialists who just want to keep troops everywhere and control everyone and constantly piss people off and, fight these insurgency brush wars to, control their own, whatever, wealth creating mechanisms.
Also, kind of mixed hybrid compliment insult from Mirza Alam. Your show is really good and your guest is even better. Wish I'd heard of him before. That's great.
You're just speaking to the blackout of the corporate media on the True Voices. True, yeah. I appreciate you.
It's really good. Yeah. It's also so funny. It's such a there's something so like Jewish mother about it. Like, and I say this, I mean, my mom isn't like this at all, but it's something, it's like, it's a great thing. It's like, but very kind of kvetchy, if you will. Like, wish I had heard of him before. Like it turns it into bad, like a down, you know what I mean? But thank you, Mirza. I'm not insulting you at all. I find it's very nice thing that you said. And yeah, well, we've had Eugene on before and we're going to have him on more, which I think what that means is you just got to hit the subscribe so you know about whenever he's on. True. And also follow him on Twitter, where his name is just his first name and last name, as you can tell, because I wrote that in to his name. And also on Break the News.
Breakthrough News.
Oh my God, I will next time we talk and I'm not sick. If I get it wrong, you can really breakthrough news. It's because it's breaking the set. That's Abby Martin's show.
It is her old show though.
I know her old show. Breakthrough News. All right.
Too much news is getting broken around
here. There's too much. Yeah, there's a lot of news breakage. And then there was another thing. Biden won't remove the embassy from Jerusalem. Also, Iran has a long memory in retaliation for Soleimani may come long after Trump is gone. I'm still not over the Soleimani thing. No, I mean, it was bad, and also he was handsome, and he was good at memes. All of that really was
an unbelievable.
That was really insane. Do you think he meant to do that? Like,
yeah, I think so. I think it's the type of thing where someone comes in there and they just say, "Look, we got him. Like, well, you want to take this guy out or what? He's responsible for the deaths of thousands of Americans. He's an Iranian. Don't you hate Iran?" But I have to say, for sure, I actually agree quite a bit with that comment. I mean, I think that without a doubt, I mean, one, I think it actually showed the weakness of the United States in the region in a way that they would lash out like that. But two, I don't know if it's about who has a long memory, but Iran has strategic interest in its own region. The United States does not. So they're certainly more motivated to do something about it. And, I think the reality is that Iran does not want war. And so they've been trying to avoid it for some time, but I think people who think you're going to keep hemming them in and they're not going to do something, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
I think Trump heard about it and was like, oh, this could be like Osama. Yes. I think he just wanted an Osama bin Laden, and he's like, we could sell this as even bigger than Osama. We could sell this as even bigger than Osama.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what I mean, sometimes you have to just be like, I think it's just simple. And I think he just wanted an Osama moment.
Wait, that was after he killed the cleric. What did they call him? The intellectual cleric, Baghdadi? That was after that, right?
Yeah, the guy that supposedly started ISIS or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm going to blame the liberal media for Soleimani. Because if they hadn't downplayed what a big deal that was, which it was,
they should have given it to him.
They were so stupid about it, though.
Give him his bin Laden. Give him his bin Laden.
Yeah, and that was that. That was him. It really was. I mean, and he was like so. I mean, Matt Taibbi wrote about this. How ridiculous the coverage of like. Look, I have problems with the way the U.S. responds to people like bin Laden or responds to Baghdadi and how we create these things. But like, come on, like all of a sudden the New York Times, the Washington Post, they were all like peaceniks. No, they weren't critical. They weren't not like praising Trump because of that. It was like very, very forced and obvious. They just couldn't give it to him.
Yeah.
It was like, really, do you remember they called him like a scholarly cleric or something? Yeah. They really downplayed it.
Yes.
I think it was the New York Times that used that phrasing and people were pretty outraged. I mean,
I was like, I read a book about ISIS and I'm like, that's like the guy. Like that's Mr. ISIS. Like you have like Trump, whatever. I don't even know if we should be over there trying to kill people and everything.
I know,
but I'm like, the guy was like, I'm going to try to kill ISIS when he was running for president. And then he did kill the guy that
killed the ISIS guy. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's like no real love lost for the ISIS guy.
Yeah. Like if you, I'm looking at Matt's article at Rolling Stone. The two sets of headlines over the weekend described the suicide of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi from the Washington Post Sunday morning. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, austere religious scholar at helm of Islamic State, dies at 48. The Post has since rewritten it. The description of an austere religious scholar with wire-rimmed glasses remains in the lead paragraph. Meanwhile, the headline on Fox, al-Baghdadi kill, had the daring military operation went down. Okay, yeah,
Right.
of course.
Yeah,
But like, that's Fox, but it's also the New York Post.
Hey, listen, I'm like, it's like
the Washington
it's
Post.
like,
The Washington Post.
It should never be. This kind of stuff should never be covered like this. But it is an interesting thing that when it's Obama, it's like The Rock is like, this fucking kicks ass.
Yeah.
Like when it's Trump, it's like, I mean, look. I want every president to be covered for war crimes. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
I want them. I hope that when Trump is not president anymore, they stay just as pissed off at presidents forever. I suspect that they will not, because I think it was really about how Trump was just individually mean to them as members of the press. It's really more a personal thing than it has to do with any of the policy or anything, really.
I agree with you 100%, Jack. It really is personal. I mean, whatever we want to say about Trump, I mean, he just ultimately played to what we all know is true, is that people like don't love the media and like they're not a beloved, trusted institution, which like honestly everyone knows, including the media. But like as we all know, political reporting is the most like self-referential fake bubble of all things at all times. And like it all kind of revolves around like they always say like Trump is going against norms, as if like norms mean anything at all. Like norms are just the way things are done. But the whole thing about it is it all depends on everyone kind of agreeing. And Trump just like broke that wheel and was just saying a lot of things. I mean, people forget now because he's done so many terrible things, the nature of the campaign, but calling out the media, calling out the donors. I mean, I'll never forget when Trump was on somewhere and he was saying he wasn't going to do the second debate because he wanted to get paid by CNN. And he was talking to somebody on some other channel and he was like, why shouldn't I get paid? He was like, their ratings are going to be so much higher if I'm on there than any other person. So why shouldn't I get paid? And you know what? There was a kernel of truth to that, because what is it if not paid entertainment? Like, I mean, that really is what cable news is, and they want to portray themselves as something else. And I think also print journalism is just as guilty. And you look at how the New York Times is a TV show now, Axios is a TV show now. You know, they're all getting into the punditry editorializing game to make money off of advertisements and shit like that, and product placements and, you know, product synergies and the different partnerships and all this, that, and the third. And whatever you want to say about Trump, he calls that out in a way that might often be ridiculous, might often not make a lot of sense, might often be in the service of something terrible, but it does speak to sort of the taproot of what a lot of us know, that like the corporate media is often lying to us. They aren't covering things well. They're as worried about their own profit margins as they were about anything else. I mean, Facebook, the same. I mean, the top 15 sites on Facebook are all right-wing media. So they're obviously benefiting heavily off of this. They're all benefiting heavily off the Trump phenomenon, and they want to act as if, I don't know, they're playing it up in a way. They're playing it up in a way because on the one hand, it's destroyed their reputation by exposing the reality of them and breaking the fourth wall. But on the other hand, it's been tremendously money-making because Trump's so entertaining. He's using their venue against them to promote himself and get earned media and drive it by offending the journalists who are giving him the earned media, which then feeds their desire to cover him more, to make him, you know, to try to discredit him. And it's a beautiful play by Trump, the way he's played the media, because he understands it's about money in a way that the political media tries to pretend they're on some high and mighty mission. I mean, I've never seen it or heard anything like it. I mean, I guess I am technically a journalist, and I've met many journalists at mainstream publications who I like, but overall, there's a tremendous haughtiness to the way they carry themselves and the way they exist in the broader environment.
It is the funniest thing ever is that like Trump said, like, you guys are all not like frauds or whatever, and like not heroes. And they reacted in, like, not by like trying to do better or not be frauds, but just by insisting they're not frauds and doing like shows all the time being like, the president said we're not we're frauds. And that is just fucked up. How can he say that? I'm like, why don't you shut up, Anderson Cooper? I actually don't care about you at all or what the president.
It's like Jim Acosta is writing a book. Who is Jim Acosta? I mean, no disrespect to the guy. He's a good-looking guy. Seems to be able to deliver his lines.
He's no
Has the guy ever broken a consequential story in his life? I mean, I think of someone like a Gareth Porter. a great investigative reporter in this country, broken many interesting stories, doing great reporting, not just on
I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, no one knows.
On a book
I
deal,
don't want to
yeah.
say no one knows who he is, because he has done things that are well known. But even someone like Seymour Hersh, who's very well respected, has now been completely pushed out of the media sphere, really because of his Syria reporting, but I think other things too. And you really look at the quality of these people who have made their careers on Trump journalism that actually have very little real journalism to their name. Like, people say, are you a journalist? I guess I'm willing to accept that label. I don't really call myself that. I mean, I do think I do a form of journalism. But, I wouldn't also try to like hold myself out as the great paragon of moral virtue, the way the Washington Post or the CNN or these other people do. And the Post, of course, breaks more stories than CNN. But I just say all that just to say most of the journalists making the most out of the Trump phenomenon are actually not like this Trump insulted me and it's some great threat to free speech. Well, like, what about the Reuters journalists in prison in Myanmar?
Yeah.
What about them? Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's just like,
you know what I mean? It's like
there
there are things like where, like the free press is under attack, like for real. And it doesn't really have so much to do with like the TV guys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, really what the news is it's like, it's fucking television. It's the same as any other television. It's just television.
I just want to do two things. Because and of course Assange and Snowden and all that, but I want to just, because people may not understand what I was talking about with the Taibbi thing, and it's important. It frustrates me when people think that whatever. I don't need to give any disclaimer. I just want to make sure people get what he was saying. The point isn't that at all that we should be going into places and killing them. In fact, Taibbi, for whatever you think of his politics, and I say that speaking to people who don't like his politics, like, he's actually very much of a dove. But I thought he was a Russian spy. Well, no. Well, there are people who hate him no one watching the show thinks he's a Russian spy, but there are people who think he's like
about cancel culture.
Problematic.
Matt has written so much good stuff, and really, I feel about Matt that like any ex-er journalist who is not Zenny Jardin at this point, like, is, you know what I mean? Like, that's such a testament. You know what I mean? That he's only bad on cancel culture is a testament to what a good journalist. I mean, you can't live your life just wanting everyone to agree with you 100%.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
You just have to accept there's some people you're gonna like some of the things they do and not like all the things. And if you don't want to work with that person on an everyday basis, that's fine. But the amount of energy that people expend, in like random
to like a real, I think, like, racist, xenophobic, nationalistic politics where like no foreign policy ideas are important. It's only about what happens within the United States. But I just want to explain Matt's piece that we talked about, that I referred to. There's a great piece. It's a great piece of media criticism. Baghdadi story reveals divided and broken news media. If you have two sets of news media, you have none. And then he goes through it. And he says, this is the important part, partly because it's what I feel. So he says, okay. So obviously Fox is like all over it and pro the way that Baghdadi thinks that happens. And then Matt writes, meanwhile, what increasingly feels like a monolithic block of anti-Trump media at the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, etc. The Baghdadi headlines were a remarkable collection of angst-ridden talking points. Even if you're not the kind of person who can ever celebrate a violent helicopter assault that results in the deaths of children, I count myself in that number. As do I, Katie Halper. The difference in how the story was covered compared to analogous stories about bin Laden or Abu Musab al-Zarqawi were striking. Apparently, the salient facts about the death of al-Baghdadi included: Trump didn't inform some key Democrats about the operation. Trump notified Russians before telling congressional leaders. The Baghdadi raid was complicated by Trump's plan to withdraw from, Syria, happening in spite of Trump, not because of him. The raid was a victory built on factors Trump derides. Trump's gloating contrasted with the more measured tone of Barack Obama. The operation was like watching a movie, except there was no live audio. This was the New York Times, where the whimpering and crying detail came from. That's weird. Trump is going to milk the political benefit of Baghdadi because he needs to, because of impeachment and other problems. Trump's Situation Room photo appeared more staged than Obama's experts said. In fact, they were taken before the read even happened. Anyway, so That's the point. It's not that, that Trump should be more belligerent or more praised. The point of that was the absolute double standard.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to share is, since we're talking about we were talking about this, and we'll get back to the more meta discussion, and then people probably have to go, but I just want to, since I mentioned this, memes, people didn't know what I was talking about with Soleimani and I don't know if you know about this, guys, but Soleimani and Trump.
Are you about to show Soleimani memes right now?
Yeah. Did you hear about this?
I know about it. I know about it.
Oh yeah.
You knew? I didn't. Okay. Sanctions are coming. I will stand against you. So they would go back and forth with memes.
Yeah. And then
he
know how to capture the
tweeted that,
culture.
then he went back. Yeah. I'm trying to find. Why does it take forever to load? I had already loaded them.
Because you need it to load right now.
I guess, right? Let's see. What's this? Another one. Active on Instagram post includes image of the White House exploding. See that one?
Yeah. It's from White House down, it looked like, or something.
Yeah. Sanctions are coming. I will stand against you. That's probably my favorite one. Anyway, it's too bad.
Information warfare is a real thing. There's no doubt about it. Memes, WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, Jesus masturbation things that gave that the Russians somehow put out to give the election to Trump.
Speaking of which, R.I.P. to Stephen Cohen, one of the last.
When?
Yeah, he passed this past weekend. Saturday, I believe. Lung cancer.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Another thing not covered by the media, of course, because why would you pay any attention to?
Wow. How old was he? He wasn't that old.
He was young. He was not that young. He was 81, but he died of lung cancer though, so it wasn't as if it was old age.
You could hear it in his voice also, which does not make it any sadder or
disappointing. Very disappointing.
Yeah. Don't smoke cigarettes, guys.
Well, fewer and fewer people are smoking every year, Katie.
Okay, that's a good thing. Yeah, apparently Stephen Cohen is dead, so R.I.P. to him, his family, Katrina vanden Heuvel.
Yes.
I really would have liked to have had him on also.
You never had him on?
No.
I'm surprised. I would have thought that would be...
I know.
Made the movie about the communist summer camp.
Yeah, I know. I should have...
The Bukharin scholar. That feels like that was...
I feel bad, yeah.
Classic New York lefty connection.
I know. Is that bad? Is that a terrible thing to say when someone dies? I can't never... Does that make it sound like you're being totally...
Self-centered? I mean, maybe, but it's also a form of praise because you wish you would have them on.
Yeah,
so
that's what
you're acknowledging
I mean,
their greatness. You're just sort of acknowledging you were not as touched by their greatness as you might like.
Maybe, yeah. I don't like to think of it that way, but I guess it could be. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. That is sad. I met him actually.
Professor. Yeah, very, very.
Sovietologist, right? Sovietist.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say
among other things.
Russian historical scholar. I mean, certainly he became famous originally because he was one of the first people to really do good scholarship on Bukharin. And at the same time, Bukharin was being rehabilitated in the Soviet Union. He was starting to do some of the early archival work and, make some arguments around, potential histories of the Soviet Union. But yeah, someone who had lived in Russia, worked in Russia, studied the Bolshevik period, studied them. He actually at one point was an advisor to the first George Bush on Russia issues. And
did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, very well respected person on détente issues across the board. One of the most notable people, one of the few people, who actually lived and had experience in Russia, contacts in Russia and the former Soviet Union as a long time. So, interesting person in many ways. Certainly his book on Bukharin is interesting if you're interested in Bolshevik history. I don't really agree with his thesis, but relevant if that's something that you're interested in. But very not. I mean, it's unbelievable. I saw him and Max Boot in some debate on Anderson Cooper a few years ago. And honestly, to go back to the conversation on the media, I actually thought it was insulting for Anderson Cooper to have him on there with Max Boot, who I mean, okay, he wrote a couple books. He writes in the Washington Post, but he's not a subject matter expert. I mean, Stephen Cohen is one of the top experts in America on Russia, on the history of Russia. And in the context of everything that's happening, the fact that you make him debate some, neocon warmongering idiot like Max Boot, who in that Small Wars book wrote about how the U.S. could have won Vietnam and every other war, blah, blah, blah. I mean, these ridiculous warmongers who don't know anything, who's just lobbing these accusations at him of being a Russian agent and this, that, and the third. That's a set piece one-on-one interview, Anderson Cooper and Stephen Cohen. With everything else that's going on here, how do you not owe your audience a dissenting view with someone who really knows what's going on and can lay it out? And it just shows the complete ridiculousness of the parameters of what takes place in any debate on quote unquote Russiagate.
Yeah, that's really terrible. Wow. What more terrible 2020 stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
What else is new?
What else is new? Yeah.
Right.
All right. Anything? I found video. Kelly found it for me. If we want to see, by the way, because we were mentioning of the Elijah McClain violent vigil, and it getting busted up. We can watch that as a way to. It's not going to be
someone just donated in euros.
I know, and it's about like weight loss or something. Oh,
Katie Halper.
Also, another thing is that this is true. Kelly found this too. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Brad. And thank you, any other moderators who I don't know of.
Oh, another 20 euros for Julian Assange. Well, shout out to that. Absolutely.
We'll do a quick, we'll do a quick thing on Julian Assange. Let me just say that read the Ben & Jerry's thing. New York Times hit piece mentioned that terrible hit piece on Bernie Sanders, which I wrote a big thing on Cindy Ember about in response to. But Mr. Sanders personally managed the Soviet delegation's visit to Burlington in October to sign the Sister City Agreement. This was the Sister City Agreement that you referred to, Eugene. Holding at least 3 phone calls with Yaroslavl officials and transmitting a detailed program covering 7 days. There was a pilgrimage to the ice cream maker Ben & Jerry's, where co-founder Ben Cohen told the Soviet officials that they could have anything they liked in the gift shop, a delegation member, Yuri Novikov, recalled in an interview.
Wow.
So that was the Ben & Jerry's
big
thing.
Big Oppo.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think the New York Times editorial board was 4-day time. So, I mean, it just shows the reality that the thing they're ripping Bernie Sanders for at the time.
Like the work,
that was a mainstream liberal position, that the United States should have better relationships with the Soviet Union. I mean, if we want to get that deep into it, that was the knock on Ted Kennedy in the 1980 campaign, right? Is that he was a Soviet agent because he was so for détente. I mean, this is a mainstream, longtime liberal opinion. You look at some of the major fights of the 1980s of people who are considered quote unquote liberal lions against the intermediate missile fight, certainly, around the overall reduction of nuclear weapons, the interventionist policy in Central America. The idea of détente, the idea of sister cities, the idea of citizen-to-citizen diplomacy was in no way, shape, or form controversial outside of these right-wing John Birch Society wingnuts. And you see now it's in the New York Times ripping Bernie Sanders, which tells you, that's why they endorsed Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar. Right. I mean, realistically, and people can say, oh, well, the editorial side and the writing side. Oh, please.
Yeah.
No. Oh, please. Yeah, the writers at the New York Times and the Washington Post control everything and all the angles. I mean, get out of here.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get published on page A1 if the angle and the things you take are against what the front page editor of the New York Times says every day.
Or what Jeff Bezos wants.
Right.
So this is and this is just quickly the Elijah McClain thing that I referred to. Share screen. I co-sign everything you just said, by the way, Eugene.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm glad you're for détente.
As both editorial and reported in my reporting voice and my editorial voice.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. You're not censoring your writers.
Exactly.
Speakers.
My inner writers. Okay, so here's going back to what we're talking about. Can you guys hear?
Mm-hmm. I could, yeah.
Story of Elijah McClain, 23-year-old black man who died after he was detained by police last year in Aurora, Colorado. McClain was a massage therapist who taught himself to play the violin and the guitar. He was a vegetarian who loved animals. He also had anemia, so he sometimes wore a ski mask to keep himself warm. Last August, he went to the convenience store to buy iced tea, and on his way home, a man called 911 because Elijah McClain was wearing that ski mask and waving his arms. I have to warn you, the body camera footage from when the police confronted McClain is disturbing. In that confrontation, he told police, quote, "I am an introvert. Please respect my boundaries that I am speaking. I am just different." Instead, they restrained him on the ground and used a chokehold. When the paramedics arrived,
Sorry,
they
I should
injected
have
him
said
with a
this. Trigger warning. This is
Awful.
obviously very disturbing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have said that before. Okay, so if you need to, to not watch this, then I'll stop sharing when we're not playing this anymore. Okay.
sedative. On the way to the hospital, McClain had a heart attack and he died a few days later. Elijah McClain's last words are haunting from this person who was clearly not a threat in any way, but who was being treated with this horribly violent force. And that exact dynamic replayed itself in Aurora, Colorado at the site of a protest and a vigil in honor of McClain on Saturday. People congregated to pay tribute to him, to call for accountability for his death, and to play their violins in his honor. And then Aurora police basically recreated the dynamic of his death. Police and riot gear came into the crowd, and look what happened.
Jesus.
Police claim they advanced when people pushed down a fence and tore plywood off store windows, threw water bottles at officers. The Aurora mayor has now called for a special meeting of the city council tomorrow. But when you see that video,
Anyway.
those folks and
So it's pretty incredibly disturbing.
Yeah, unbelievable. Which is
and-
also, by the way, that protest, one of the protests that allegedly some of these, actions, these charges against these 6 people who've been arrested in Denver, of course, 4 of them, my comrades in the PSL, that's one of them, June 27th, then July
Right.
3rd, then July 12th, then July 25th. Those 4 protests are, now deemed to be criminal, but you can see right there, who the real criminals are in Aurora in this situation.
Like, you can't ask for a less threatening protest. People playing violence.
And they just declared it an unlawful assembly completely randomly.
Yeah. It's disgusting. The tie yellow ribbon for Julian Assange. Thank you, Bokjun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And whoops.
Hopefully he will not be extradited, but
I know. Any predictions on that?
I mean, the prediction is that he'll be extradited. I think that this is obviously happening at the highest level beyond jurisprudence. There's no constitution in England, so that you can be a lot more laissez-faire with the laws.
Yeah.
I think the only chance that there will not be an extradition is if there are people high in the British establishment who maybe see this as payback for that CIA woman who killed that kid and the U.S. spirited her out of the country last year, that maybe this would be it. But I suspect since the UK hates Julian Assange because he revealed just as much about them, quite frankly, in WikiLeaks as the U.S., that they will extradite him. I think it's very dangerous, very terrible. I think on the merits, they should not extradite him. But I think if the merits were what we were judging him on, this situation on, he would not be where he is in Belmarsh prison right now.
Right.
And I think the amount of, legally dubious actions by the United Kingdom during this whole thing, including essentially imprisoning him in the Ecuadorian embassy after he was given citizenship and asylum when they should have allowed him to egress out of the country into South America. I think it's obvious that they're not that committed. The CIA-funded Spanish security firm. Everything about the prosecution of Julian Assange
UC Global,
has been, completely overboard, completely underhanded, bending every rule and every law, because obviously they cannot have someone who is going to rip the veil off of these policies the way that he did. I mean, there's a reason why in 2010 the Pentagon said that they viewed WikiLeaks as a national security threat. I mean, the whole thing about them, they're like a foreign spy agency. I mean, they're obviously not a spy agency, but they're in a way they're more dangerous, because rather than being an entity which is looking
Spies
to
at least keep it private.
Right. I mean, WikiLeaks is looking to expose these people's crimes. Like, spies are just looking for leverage for somebody else. WikiLeaks is looking to publish
Spies have
the crimes
too, and they're like, we don't want our crimes out there either.
Yeah. Yeah.
And WikiLeaks has an amazing record of things that they've published. I mean, it really is unbelievable. I mean, I think almost nobody in the past 15 years could even come close to what they've revealed across so many. I mean, just things you don't even know about. I mean, last year they turned Namibian politics upside down by reporting this unbelievable scandal with this Icelandic fishing company and the Namibian government. And like, to Americans, maybe that's irrelevant, but it was a major expose in that country and a huge look into what was an extremely corrupt abuse of one of the main sources and only sources Namibia has of foreign exchange and money to develop their country. And, you just think about the things that WikiLeaks has done, and that's like a really, really small example. But I think, no one else, I mean, they affected almost every region of the world, every major country. I mean, they can say whatever they want. WikiLeaks has exposed stuff about Russia, about Bashar al-Assad, about the U.S. government, about Ecuador, about major corporations, about everybody. And ultimately, you can say what you want about this, that, or the third, but I don't see how you could possibly look at this prosecution and not see this as being politically motivated by the people who were revealed by WikiLeaks as trying to send a message.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, I just put a link into our chat with Max Blumenthal, where he talked about WikiLeaks and how that Spanish company spied on him, took out the baby's diapers. And I talked last week with Ben Norton a little about this, and then of course Kevin Gostola, who's one of the few journalists covering that. Jack was there. Despite praising WikiLeaks during the 2016 campaign, Pompeo keeps Trump from being pro-Assange. He did praise him. First he said he should be killed, then he praised him. Yeah. Anyway,
right.
But no, the big thing is that, like, why aren't libs up in arms about this total? I mean, I sound like a broken record, and I said this with Samuel Moyn, Ian Samuel, another law professor. Samuel Moyn, that why isn't Rachel Maddow up in arms about this stuff? It's a total miscarriage of justice.
That's why.
Right, that's why. Russia.
They leaned into this fake narrative. I mean, and it is. I mean, realistically, nothing that the people who believe in has really been proved. I mean, at an existential 20,000 foot level, do like countries spy on countries and meddle in countries? Sure, like that's obviously true. But the narrative that's been put forward by like these authorities is, has so many holes in it on so many different levels, but it's become the sort of like, creation myth of anti-Trump liberalism that it can't be looked at objectively in any way, shape, or form. And somehow WikiLeaks has been turned. I mean, look, if you have something to hide that when revealed is so discrediting, it could cause you to lose the presidency.
Right.
Is that WikiLeaks' fault or is that your fault? I mean, it's hard for me to be like, oh, wow, Hillary Clinton was so bad that when it was revealed all these terrible things, people didn't want to vote for her. Well, maybe she shouldn't have done those terrible things in the first place.
I know. It's like maybe they shouldn't have been sending all those fucked up emails. You
right.
know what I mean?
Had you not been rigging the primary against Bernie Sanders.
I will also say, that like complaining about the methods is like such loser shit. You know what I mean? Like politics is like a dirty game. It really is. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like emails are a part of it. And like everybody should be smarter than saying shit on email, and fucking Podesta shouldn't click a fucking phishing link. Like it's going to happen that someone's going to click a phishing link at some point. And like, frankly, I got to be honest with you, like Russiagate and even kind of like the how angry everyone is about Assange, it's loser shit because they lost. And now they want to like complain about the fucking that the rules weren't followed. I'm like, you just lost. That's the way it goes. You know what I mean?
Defeat is an orphan and victory has 1,000 fathers. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah, for real.
And I'll never forget that it was Podesta asking some cybersecurity guy, so should I click on this? And then the guy writing back, absolutely do click on this.
Yeah, look,
it wasn't even hacked. He was
He
fifth.
was just
No,
secure.
I think he literally just
I made a
meant
mistake.
he meant to say do not.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
That's
He
what it
was
was,
like,
which
he
is
was
like
absolutely
funnier.
do click on this, and then Podesta clicks on it, and like,
Which is
well,
also
there's-
funny because, like, in what context would Podesta think that a guy would recommend?
I
Like,
know.
absolutely do click on this. It's like,
Yeah. Well,
Joanne,
I mean,
yeah.
this is the guy who left his laptop in a cab and had his secretary email him that the password to get into something that he was signed into was password.
Oh my
So,
god!
I mean,
yeah.
you know,
it's like,
obviously
but like the way I feel about it is, I'm like, listen, like, it's gonna be this way. Like, politics are dirty, and we're in a digital age now, and there's more like record of what people say and everything like that. So let's stop. Like Hillary Clinton was actually, you know, ahead on this, and that's why she tried to break federal law and set up a fucking private email server. Like,
and that's a
actually,
great
like,
point. Broke
of anybody, this person should have been more aware that you don't say shit on email because
Right.
because she went to a great and illegal, you know, she went to an illegal length to avoid FOIA requests, literally because of emails.
There's
Like,
a good case to make that Hillary Clinton and Cheryl Mills and Huma Abedin violated the Federal Records Act for sure.
Oh, really?
Which is like not a
yeah.
small, well, to wipe those hard drives.
Yeah.
And, you know, listen, there's a reason why Cheryl Mills was given immunity right away to speak on this, because it was obvious that she was guilty of like people don't recognize when you're a public official, you can't just erase stuff. They erased 20,000 emails, I think it was.
And also the server was specifically set up because they knew that everything had to be held on records. It's like they were like, okay, so how do we get around that? We set up a private thing, and then that became a big fucking problem. Like,
I mean, she told Goldman Sachs you have to have a public and a private position.
I know you can argue about whether or not like it's important or blah 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 or whatever, and I don't really give a fuck. But like you should understand as a political actor that doing something illegal will give you massive liability for your enemies, and you know, and like and frankly, like if you've already been hit with that liability, then like tell everybody don't send stuff that's bad on email, because that's what we were worried about in the first place, and now we have to have records. So Nina Tandon, don't say that we should bomb them and charge them for it. You know what I mean?
It's the same people who are the people who made sure that Hunter Biden spoke at the DNC so that they could show how much the Republican argument is ridiculous. I mean, anyone with half a brain would have been like, keep this dude 1,000 miles away from the convention. I mean, there's so many different things you could say about Hunter Biden. I mean, first and foremost, we have to revisit the story of how he got kicked out of the military for testing positive for doing cocaine. Now, his story, which is unbelievable, is that he was at a bar, stepped outside of the bar to smoke a cigarette, was offered a cigarette by some unknown individual, smoked the cigarette, left the bar, was driving home, and realized halfway there that there was something in the cigarette and that somehow he had been drugged. I mean, that's really his excuse for testing positive for cocaine. But I mean, you know, this is a guy who, you look at Burisma Holdings, I've looked into this a little bit.
Yeah.
Their entire business model is in Kazakhstan and Ukraine to point out to people that the reason you want to work with us is we are in tight with the West. We are not one of these like corrupt oligarchic companies. And they were like holding up. We got Hunter Biden, we got Koffer Black, we got all these other people, and they're like they're using this to get business. And so this is obviously classic. People do this all the time with boards. Like, the people on the board are totally unqualified and are only there because they know other more important people who can then solidify. Well, shit, if Joe Biden's son is on it and the fucking former head of the CIA counterterrorism center is on it, they gotta be connected in America. This has to be legitimate, and this is going to be good for us, because then we're not going to get caught up in being some sort of like Russian gas company. We'll be able to exploit all this on the right side of the geopolitical framing in order to make the money. And then somehow you've got Democrats like, oh, he didn't do anything corrupt at all. What are you talking? Obviously, this kid has only succeeded in life because he's traded off of his father's name and is a complete loser and fuck up. And, you know, not the first or the last rich person to be that way. But why you would want to construct a narrative that somehow this is like fake and he's really like an upstanding good person. It's like all you're doing is playing into the you think you're standing up to Trump, but you're making his point for him by so obviously ignoring that this kid is just a fail son trust fund kid. I mean, what is the purpose of this?
I have to, unfortunately, I agreed with everything you say, and I might be the only person in the country, but I'm a Hunter Biden lover. I love Hunter Biden. I loved seeing Hunter Biden at the DNC, and Hunter being like mega fucked up on coke and leaving the army. That's actually like baller as hell, and I like that. And like there's stories about like Hunter like doing crack for 3 days, and like the strippers that he was with had to go like buy dildos for him and shit. I'm like, Hunter rocks. And if anything, to get my vote, put
Hunter on the ticket.
Not everybody else, not everyone else in America, but to win my vote, Hunter Biden is the only road to me voting for Joe Biden. More Hunter and more
and less Bo,
and nothing but Hunter. I want nothing but Hunter is what I want.
I used
to
live near that strip club where they said he was smoking crack. Apparently he was nice about it. And when they were like, "Yo, you can't smoke any crack in here," he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And
that is nice.
Hunter, to me, I've watched videos of Hunter and stuff like that. You're absolutely right. Of course, it's ridiculous that this guy who was on a fucking that's why I love Hunter. Actually,
yeah, I know,
because Hunter's just this guy that he's like, I love crack.
Hunter's gonna hunt.
Then he's like, I love crack, and then like his dad's vice president, he's like, I'm working for fucking the Ukrainian oil company or whatever.
You got $1 million.
I just really am like into drugs or whatever. Like I like drugs and fucking around. Like
when I saw that
for George W. Bush.
I like Hunter.
Yeah. I think Hunter's very likable. I'm not kidding. I think he's the most likable of the Bidens. I didn't like that part. I somehow I missed that. Did he talk or he just appeared?
It was in a little montage. He talked, but they put him in a little suit. It was not done well. It was not done well.
Yeah, no, it was a little.
But when I saw him doing an interview with, I don't remember who it was, but he was very like totally honest about his addiction stuff. I felt and he's married now to a nice Jewish girl. He converted. I think they have shalom tattoos or something. I don't care about that part at all. I just think it's kind of funny.
Married his dead brother's wife like 2 weeks later.
I don't think they got married.
Wow,
I think they just dated.
That's true.
Yeah, no, they dated.
They hooked up. They hooked up.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Hey, what are you gonna do? Hunter's a wild guy. That's wild times. That's Hunter's a wild
if there's anything you expect from Hunter, it's that he will hook up with his dead brother's widow, right?
Like,
okay. Well, someone here is trying to disagree with me, saying they've known that people dip cigarettes. Look, I've known people who've done a lot of shit.
I think that was a joke.
In reality, obviously, he was snorting coke in this bar.
You can dip cigarettes in coke. What actually happened is this: Hunter did coke and then also smoked a cigarette that was dipped in coke that he dipped in coke, and he was like, "Maybe that's enough. Maybe I'll get away with it if I say I just smoked the cigarette." But he did mega coke. You don't test positive for coke on smoking a fucking cigarette.
No, the guy who was like giving him bumps on the urinal or whatever, he's doing lines off the urinal, and it's like, "Hey man, you want to go smoke a cigarette?"
I have to be honest with you. If you're the guy that spent 3 days in a strip club on crack, you're not getting kicked out of the army for like dipping a cigarette in cocaine.
How do we get Hunter Biden and Duncan Hunter together? That's what I want. I want Duncan Hunter and Hunter Biden together. That's like a straight. When I heard that Duncan Hunter, the Republican who got 30 shots at Tortilla Coast, he's now I think in jail or whatever. But his father was also Hunter. He was like a right-wing Republican. He was like a veteran Navy SEAL. According to him, he had like a lot of PTSD. Him and his wife were spending all the campaign funds for their own shit. And then when it came out that he was like partying super hard, was always drunk. At one point, he bought 30 shots on his campaign credit card at Tortilla Coast, which is like a big place where Capitol Hill people party. And yeah, he was living it up. There's no doubt about it. His wife turned state's evidence on him too. She broke spousal privilege to roll him, and partially because he rolled her under the bus. He was like, my wife did all the books. I don't know anything about it.
Wow.
So she broke spousal privilege and was like, no. So he settled, I think, so he doesn't have to go to jail, but he had to give up his seat. But yeah, Duncan Hunter, 30 shots at Tortilla Coast.
I want to see a hangover with Duncan Hunter, Hunter Biden, Jerry Falwell Jr., and Donald Trump Jr.
Let's write that.
I want to see that.
Jerry Falwell Jr. Woo.
Oh man!
I mean, coming from like down there in Jerry Falwell country, Lynchburg is not that far from Charlottesville. So back in the day, Jerry Falwell was a big dude, and Pat Robertson. So to see his son fall so far, the last photo of him on the boat, pants slightly. Oh my god!
Oh yeah, what was that? Yeah,
I've been following the thing from the beginning.
He also was on the board of Amtrak.
That was Hunter Biden.
That's Hunter.
Yeah. Sorry,
And
going
you know,
back to Hunter.
another senator gave Hunter Biden a recommendation for that. And his qualification was that he rode Amtrak a lot.
Yeah, I know. Who was the senator? Who was the senator who did that?
I don't know. Some old
Duncan Hunter's. Oh, the senator that. Okay,
some old guy who I think may be dead. I'm going to say
no, he's still alive. I think.
Was it Ted Kaufman?
No.
Okay, I don't know. Some Delaware senator. All I know is
Carper.
Only because people are still talking about it in the chat.
Yeah.
Only because people are still talking about the chat. Yes, it's possible. You could test possible for cocaine from dipping in a cigarette. No, that's not what happened with Hunter.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. A million%.
Yeah.
The Hunter Biden story for cocaine is right up there with the story, a scandal that few people here will remember. When Chuck Robb, the senator from Virginia who'd been the governor, is married to the daughter of Lyndon B. Johnson, he in 1996 was caught with a Playboy playmate cheating on his wife. And among other things she noted about the parties they went to was that there was a lot of cocaine there. When confronted about that on television, Chuck Robb said to the interviewer, "I don't even know what cocaine looks like." So maybe he didn't. Maybe he was completely naive. Or maybe he was like with a bunch of like coked up country club rich people in Virginia Beach with this Playboy playmate doing coke. I mean, like,
we'll just never know. I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, I mean, why did George W. Bush skip that thing on the National Guard to go work in politics? Because he was obviously on coke. I mean, I don't know why people expect these like random rich trust fund people who get involved in politics to not also be like everyone else in their social cohort.
I want to give people a
What's that Matthew Lillard movie and with Freddie Prinze Jr. and they're all rich trust fund people?
Are you talking about? Is it less
Cruel Intentions? Is that it?
Oh, Cruel Intentions.
Oh yeah, I saw that in the theater.
Yeah.
I think someone's upset someone said cool that you have a Republican on. I think someone's upset because we were saying that Hillary did some corrupt stuff, and
well, she did,
and we know that Trump is also corrupt. That's the thing that
they're all corrupt. I mean, like, realistically, I'm sorry, I don't even know who did that comment, but I don't know who these people are who think people in politics are like not corrupt. Everyone who reaches it to that high level is super corrupt.
No, it's not that. I'm sure that you've have encountered this where people are like, why aren't you talking about Trump? And the truth is, like, I just want to say that it's there's a lot of things you can say to that, but like Trump does not need to play by the same rules as anyone else. And that's not because of we didn't create that. We're not his voters. We're not,
right.
He's not appealing to us. Trump works because, and I've said this a lot of times, he never pretends to be a morally righteous, ideologically consistent person, which is why he has a leg up on every single person he's ever faced off with. And the person he would have the least amount of leg up on would have been Sanders, because Sanders is consistent and not corrupt.
Well, I think you're saying that the election is quite close. I mean, I don't know if it is
right.
Quite
and so
close.
The idea is that we're going to be
but the idea that somehow like that question is relevant. I mean, there will be so many corrupt deals under a Biden. I mean, there are so many corrupt deals that are facilitated by the U.S. government. I mean, you want to talk about the impact of corruption and the election being close. Well, what is Joe Biden saying about how the Justice Department is going to start treating quote unquote white collar crime? Because right now, under the past 4 presidents, all the corporations that commit most of the crimes, no one ever does time in jail. Not because they can't be convicted for it, but because the Justice Department has a set guidance that says that they should not go towards criminal penalties. They should not go towards holding individual people accountable for corporate criminality, but that instead they should go for these slap on the wrist type of situations where the corporations, they're called no fault admissions, right? They pay a fine, but they actually sign a piece of paper that says, even though we're paying the fine, we did not in fact commit the crime. Right. So you have to ask yourself, when you're talking about what is the impact of corruption in a president, and you're trying to make the assumption between Trump and Joe Biden, you know, yes, you can talk about Trump Tower or whatever you think is relevant in terms of Trump's corruption. But my question is, why is it that a Democratic Justice Department, just as they did under Obama and just as they did under the Republicans, will let the vast majority of corporate crime go completely and totally unmanaged, and in fact will engage in extremely corrupt practices? Will Joe Biden diversify the control of trillions of dollars of federal funds in the Federal Reserve by black BlackRock? Because that's who the main advisor is of the Fed. And so you got BlackRock is getting money from the Fed and advising on who they're giving the money to. I found one company last week that has 4 employees, but has gotten $1.2 billion in TALF funds, the Temporary Asset Loan Protection Program. And what does it do? I looked it up. It's a financial advisor. And this is interesting. It manages millions of dollars, and one of its funds with tens of millions of dollars is in Bermuda. Now, maybe that's completely random, or maybe more likely it's a bunch of rich people. They're investing their money. They're advising them on how to switch that money to Bermuda so that they can avoid taxes on it and not pay it. That sounds pretty corrupt to me. Is Joe Biden going to go clean that up? No, he will not. He will continue it, which is what he said, that he agrees with Trump's policies on the Federal Reserve. So if you want to talk about corruption, you want to talk about Trump, you want to talk about Biden, you got to actually talk about the impact of corruption on people's daily lives. Right. And that's mainly corporate crime. That's mainly corporate corruption, which both parties are completely soft on.
Except one party pretends to be running against it. And that's the other problem. Right. That's the thing. Trump doesn't pretend to be running against corruption, which is why. But look, I was trying to be nice and respectful. But Josh, the guy who was mad at you. No. I'm not. My tone isn't towards you. It's towards the person. I'm talking to Josh now. Josh, I was trying to be respectful, but you came out because you were saying that Eugene was a Republican, or you were making that point, and I was very patient. I didn't make fun of you for making the stupid point, but Trump. But come on, dude. Sandra, I think you mean Sanders. Sandra is corrupt and disingenuous. Jack, guess what he's going to say about Sanders? He's not.
The saddest cut, I've said it on the show before, is that, the real saddest thing about Bernie is that in the end, he was even a Democrat.
He was even a Democrat. That's the biggest insult really about Sanders. Yeah. So come on, dude. Also know your dude. Stay in your lane. Say Sanders is a Marxist, too extremist. That's not true that he's too extremist, but that's not inherently on its face a lot. This whole thing is where is he corrupt and disingenuous? He's corrupt and disingenuous. The guy wears the same suit. I thought that was the problem. And he's stubborn. I thought that was the problem. I love when people make fun of Sanders being like, oh, when's he going to stop talking for Medicare for all? He's been talking about that for 30 years. Do you realize how you sound to a normal human being who cares about shit or ever gets sick or knows people who die? You're supposed to move on from that talking point, which hasn't become a reality when it's actually picking up steam. You're supposed to.
Here's the true reality here is that, these arguments are always made from a moral high ground, which is totally unexplained. I mean, I spoke to this a little bit earlier in the show, but, you even look at any of these housing programs that are going on. One of the major issues in every major city is housing affordability and gentrification. No matter what the president says, and Obama said this, Biden is saying it now, he's going to spend all this money on affordable housing. If you look at how housing authorities work and the way they spend this money when it's given to them, it's to facilitate gentrification, to facilitate the gentrification of whole communities that raises the cost of living, that makes it more difficult for people to survive in cities that are also having rampant income inequality, because as they gentrify and the overall cost of living in the city grow, there are fewer and fewer job opportunities that are actually making it possible for people to live there, which is why you have situations like Washington, D.C., a historically black city that now has fewer than 50% of people. That's why when you look at the $20 billion that they're going to give to policing, for instance, and say, well, it can't be in contradistinction with anything that affects public safety, when the police say everything that affects public safety. So they're not going to use that $20 billion on supporting programs that are actually going to address these issues. I mean, what about the people who are on TANF right now, mostly young black mothers living in poverty with their children, who in many democratic states are being paid on so-called welfare at below or at the poverty line? Well, who's really going to speak for them, and who's going to change that? What's the bigger picture there for those people? What about the person who lives in Detroit next to the Marathon refinery, that's one of the largest refineries on earth, that is destroying asthma when Biden is saying he will never end fracking? And these are exactly the type of plants all over Louisiana and Cancer Valley that are killing thousands and thousands of people for reasons that could potentially be avoided. That won't be changed. That seems like a bigger picture to me. So I always wonder, when people come from the moral high ground of, well, this is going to be better for this person or that person. Well, who are they talking about? I mean, 74 million working class people didn't vote in 2016. Is it because they're stupid? Because they don't know what's going on? Or is it more likely because they don't see their daily life change one way or another? I mean, it's really, quite frankly, Very simple, very easy to understand why people don't have hope, why they've lost hope. So, people make these arguments, but they're general arguments. They're not actually based on historical fact or historical precedent, on the current reality of what people are facing. And they're almost always made by people who, quite frankly, have very little relationship to those they claim to be arguing for. So it's a weak argument to make from a very low moral base, but it's effective because, again, to go back to our old conversation, there's no education to point that out. There's no one to make the point that, okay, well, you claim it's going to be a better situation for everyone after this. Well, let's go to 1992. I mean, I think on the merits in 1992, Bill Clinton is better than George H.W. Bush, right? I mean, he was the first president to really start talking about gay rights in a presidency. He was obviously the only one talking or caring about unions. His entire campaign, it's the economy, stupid. Go look at those videos of Bill Clinton. I'm going to do things that work for you. We're concerned about your pocketbook. We're not talking about trickle-down economics. He said, I'm going to use a peace dividend from the end of the Cold War to make people's lives better. And then he shipped 1 to 4 million jobs overseas. He passed the crime bill and the effective death penalty act. He then came and changed the rules around the border. Do you know, under Bill Clinton, it was when the Border Patrol changed their reality, where they said, we're going to focus the majority of our resources on the easiest to cross places so that we can force more people into the harder to cross places. And they said, not basically, they said explicitly, this will increase the mortality rate and it will deter people from coming to the country. They killed people. They did welfare reform. They threw millions of people into poverty and a precarious existence. So what is your evidence that Joe Biden, a pro-segregationist, pro-war on drugs, pro-mass incarceration, pro-balanced budget, pro-every corporation in America coming from Delaware and being the captive of the credit card industry and all of that in corporate America there, that this person all of a sudden is going to become someone totally different and get into office in 2016 and be remarkably better on all of these issues? Or is it more likely that when he tells the Wall Street donors, which is verified, that nothing will fundamentally change? When people from his campaign tell other rich people and rich donors, don't worry about the things that you think are too left-wing because we're just doing that, this is a quote, to make the Warren people happy, and it won't be central to our government.
Did they even mention Sanders?
It was only the Warren people, I think. It was just like,
fuck that,
we're doing the Warren people happy. I'm like, well,
they knew that they wouldn't satisfy us. They knew that they wouldn't even reach us. By the way, I want to. There's a serious question for you, Eugene from Sparky, but I also want to give another shout out to our friend Josh, who made another point, which is that I had it up, but I took it down, which is that why didn't Bernie, he should have stayed in his own lane and run in his own party. Okay. So here's how elections work. If Bernie Sanders had done that, do you know what would have happened? If Sanders had run as an independent or as a Green Party or with the PSL, do you know what would have happened? Who do you think that would have harmed? Like, seriously, if Sanders wanted to be a spoiler, in fact, all the other people in the comments are mad at Sanders for the opposite reason, which is that he threw it in too early. He didn't get concessions. And he should have been a spoiler is what other people say. But Josh, what about Trump? There needs to be the version of like, but his emails, but for Trump, but his being Trump. But his fucking Trump, we know that. But anyway, maybe Josh is actually an accelerationist plant. And he really wanted Bernie to run as an independent or a third party so he could have handed the election to Trump. There's some more questions. I have to have a glass of water, but I'm down to keep talking. I don't know if you guys need to cycle out.
I can a little longer. I got to go. I have to go fairly soon. I got like 15 minutes more.
All right. I can hold 15 minutes more. We can do that.
All right. So you guys, I'm going to grab some water. You guys, pick some questions. Talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, so what? We can actually select questions here. No, I can't.
I don't know. People. I see one person has paid $5 to ask me what I think about something. So.
Oh yeah. So what do you think? What do you think about 40 acres and a mule?
I will honor that. This is honestly deeply ironic because I was actually just reading about the history of 40 Acres and a Mule this morning, which is tied to the siege of Savannah, interestingly enough. Anyway, I won't get off into Civil War history, but just a weird that this is coming full circle here.
Yeah.
In the day. It was like 10:30 in the morning. Okay. Anyway, I think
10:30 at night.
I think in the most general sense, I think reparations makes total sense. I think it's 100% relevant. I think a lot of times we have decontextualize reparations to the level that like we've taken it outside of practical reality. All sorts of people in different contexts have paid reparations. I'm not saying any particular situation is correct or whatever. There's a new economic policy in Malaysia. Obviously, there's the history of German reparations to Jewish people. There's more than that. So I think one thing we just have to take one step back, and it's become such a loaded phrase of reparations. It's more about what people are taking from you rather than the reality, which is sort of repairing harm historically that has been done, that makes it, more relevant. And I think, 40 acres and a mule, I think Sherman for sure was expressing the basic reality of the time, that they were crushing the slave system, that these slave owners were basically traitors, so who cared about their land anyway, and that the most solid way to give these people a chance to succeed coming out of slavery is to give them a bit of land that they could work and, a mule to work it with, and that since they've been working the land for some time, in his sense, and interestingly enough, 40 acres and a mule was one of the more conservative programs at the time. And Sherman's argument was basically like, you don't really need to do that much. Just give them some land, give them a mule, and it'll be fine, and we can keep it moving. Radical Republicans were saying we need much, much more than that. And it's an interesting history. But I think where we are now, at the end of the day, to me, reparations, I think part of it too is, how would it look? I think that's the question people also want to ask. I don't know if that's something that one person should answer. I think that's kind of the beauty of Congressman Conyers' bill, the H.R. 40, named after the 40 acres and a mule, because at the end of the day, it's to study it, to look at it, to evaluate it. And I think also to put it in the context right now of the worldwide movement, the Caribbean countries, the CARICOM countries have been making a big deal about reparations from Europe. The non-aligned movement has taken that up. And so there's a bigger, broader conversation about it. But I think 40 acres and a mule was certainly warranted then. And I think in our modern era, how that looks, I don't know. This was obviously a question that tripped up Sanders quite a bit. He was arguing for the Jim Clyburn 2020, which isn't the worst thing I've ever heard. But I just am allergic to the idea that like just cutting a check is somehow like wrong. I don't know if that's how I would want to structure it, but it's like historically just. And I think that in that sense, like I'm for it. But I think figuring out what it could look like in a modern context is exactly why Congressman Conyers set up H.R. 40 to really look at all the different issues and all the different relevant pieces to it. And I wish we could have that discussion. I wish Congress would pass that bill and lay it out in a way that's logical. But here's a good example for people to just think about here. Jeff Bezos is so rich, he could give all 876,000 Amazon employees a bonus of $105,000 and still have $92 billion left. Yeah. So I think the reality that like reparations is not about going into individual people's pockets. It's about really recognizing the institutional wealth that was built on the back of slavery and addressing the institutions that exist that have been built on that back, that have quite a bit of resources and money and other things like that. And it's a consequence. How does that work? How does it play out? I don't want to answer all those questions for myself, but I think it's a very valid circumstance. And again, I would encourage people to look at the new economic policy in Malaysia. Not exactly the same situation, but a somewhat similar situation. That's a country that, has a kind of a system of reparations. Again, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the model, but it just sort of shows, I think a lot of the ideas about it are based on sort of cultural, social flashpoints and not real discussions of what it means and what it could look like.
That sounds, I only heard the last part of it, but it sounded very good.
Thank you. Anytime you can talk about Malaysian governmental
I was going to
policy.
say, you took the easy way out. I knew you were going there. I knew that where that was going to end up. Josh keeps, all right, Josh, wanted Bernie to run. I'll stop responding to this. It's just like all the worst arguments. Wanted Bernie to run with Warren. They would have crushed Donald. He should have accepted vice president. But then he admits Warren wouldn't have because he was making snide comments about how she couldn't lead because she was a woman. Oh my God.
It's right, actually. If Bernie had been Warren's VP, they could have gone on together to win 0 states, like Warren did as a presidential candidate.
Right.
The other way around, maybe,
win
but
0.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's just,
I'm just gonna start calling her an anti-Semite. Why not? There's no what the fuck evidence is there? I don't believe for a second that Sanders said a woman couldn't run because he pointed out all the time that Hillary won the popular vote because he said a woman should be and would be president for decades. Which, to be fair,
but which one is it? Because when Hillary lost, everyone said this shows how sexist the country is and a woman can't win. And look, I was a skeptic that a black person could win.
Yeah.
I also think that not because it's right, but because a lot of people don't believe that women are
right. Well, that's the other right.
That it could affect
a lot of
the
women
situation.
voted for Trump.
So if Bernie,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if Bernie Sanders' position was, it's not. I mean, it's even if he said that, it obviously wasn't like I'm not for women being president,
or I'm not for you being a president.
Right.
Either.
In the context of an argument about who has the better
more
chance
selectable.
to win,
yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know how you don't have that conversation. Now you can dispute if he was right. Certainly,
and you can say, "Well, you're Jewish,"
but to act as if it was some sort of like. Hit job, sexist, whatever was unbelievable. And
that's a really good point, which is that you can't say both things. And people do this. They say that she lost because sexism, and if you think that sexism would ever play a role in an election, you're sexist. Then you can't say that Hillary lost because sexism. The truth is, I think it's a lot of things. I think that Obama. Anyway, I mean, there's a lot to this conversation. I just happen to not believe that if he said that to her, it was in any way that was anything but like, I just don't. I mean, he stood back again in 2016, so she could run if she wanted to.
Yes.
So any views he had on this were not in any way self-serving. I can't hear you, your mic. Can you hear him, Eugene?
It's breaking up.
It's breaking up, yeah.
Oh, wow, really? Let me try to mute.
No, now you're good. Now you're good.
Okay,
good. How about this? It's like, whether or not Bernie said that pundits were saying like, that it might be Art Hall coming out of this election, as we saw, whether or not he said that in a private conversation, I don't care. What I do know is that presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren, when she was on camera on CNN wearing a lavalier mic and went up to him right after a
debate
debate for a like pre-scripted reality television show moment like that CNN producers, that to me, I'm like, she knew at that moment that she was mic'd and that was a TV moment. And CNN is ridiculous for pretending that they didn't have the footage for fucking, a day or whatever after that. That was ridiculous. So whether or not Bernie said it, she used it for political gain and then tried to run a reality television show moment off it. And that's not something that you do to somebody that you like respect.
I know. I'm so sorry.
I'm in favor of the snake thing, even though a lot of people got very mad about it. I sent snakes, and I still think that she's a snake, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm snake positive. They should not be. It's snake. Don't be snake-ophobic. She is snake-like. She moves. She's sneaky and slippery, and it's true. And that's not a bad thing per se. But like, you got to own it and run on that, like Donald Trump.
If you're gonna play politics, you can't act like you didn't play politics.
Yes,
right. And realistically, she thought her only chance to succeed was to knock Bernie out of the box. Yeah. And she went for a few knockout blows.
Dude,
that one is that Bernie is racist and can't talk to racial justice issues, and two, that Bernie is sexist and somehow doesn't support women. I mean, she thought those two things. But the reality is that what Elizabeth Warren is selling is a very small subset of individuals who support that. I mean, I'm sorry, but it was a campaign that was pitched towards upper middle class liberal people. That was the majority of her support. Even though she claimed to be leaning in on racial justice, she showed zero ability to attract any black voters to her banner at all. And that was a huge fraud, quite frankly. I'm sorry, but the whole Elizabeth Warren is good for black people was a complete fraud when the actual voting took place, which is not surprising because she has zero demonstrative history of involvement in the black community, on black issues, on civil rights.
There's been a very fraught Native American black relationship over the years. So you gotta cut her some slack. Come on.
I mean, well, listen, maybe she contributed a recipe to the Pow Wow Chow cookbook when she was fake, pretending to be a Native American.
So did her husband.
The book was called Pow Wow Chow. I mean, how racist can you be?
I know. We were gonna make it.
We got to ask ourselves why she got a pass, and I think she got a pass because she was. I mean, she's smart. Elizabeth Warren is very smart. And she found a subset of individuals whose politics she could speak to 100%. It just turns out that's not the majority of people who actually vote.
It is the majority of people that work in media, maybe.
Maybe.
Which is kind of fun for her because she gets to go on a lot of TV shows and stuff like that.
Here's the deal. I've
got a plan.
I've got
Poor
I
Bernie.
don't understand why that's so appealing.
Bernie. She goes, remember he went up to her after that piece that when first of all, she goes, the moderator goes to him, is it true you said that a woman could never run? He goes, no, I never. Then he goes through why. And so I never said that. And then the moderator goes, thank you,
Nice.
Senator Sanders. Senator Warren, how did you feel when Bernie Sanders said a woman could never win the presidency?
So this is scripted CNN reality TV show.
Believe it. And then afterwards, Warren goes over to him, and Bernie Sanders, being like the least fake person ever, is like reaches out his hand to fucking shake her hand because he's a mensch enough to be like, I know she's lying about me and trying to stab me in the back, but whatever. I've known her for a while. She does good things. You know, she's good on a lot of the issues, whatever. Reaches out the hand. She's like, I think you just called me a liar. No, you called him a liar, and then he defended himself. And then, but the best part also is that Tom Steyer's like, I don't want to get involved, but hi, Bernie. He's like, loves Bernie. He's like, I love him. Hi. And
Tom
then,
Steyer's is truly fanboying it up.
I relate to between that and his love of the song "Back That Ass Up." I find myself identifying with.
Honestly, that's the greatest. That's going to go down as one of the greatest primary moments of all
it's unbelievable. He just doesn't stop, and he starts doing the Arsenio Hall thing. It's like,
I mean, his wife is also up there struggling.
I know. You know what he does? I don't know if you guys can. I show some of this video because I want people to. And then this will.
Is there anyone who hasn't seen this video? Is the real?
I think there's more people than you think. Hold on, because I want people to see this dance move. I want to see how many people know what the move is. Hold on.
I mean, it was pretty terrible. I mean, I just have to say, you talk about transactional politics. How on earth did he get juvenile? I mean, everything about that. But he was doing the best he could.
Like Tom Steyer. Why is that not believable? Hold on. All right.
For many reasons.
Okay, watch this dance move. We'll see who knows what this is. Okay, there he's doing it.
Wow.
But look at his family too. His daughter and his wife are just as bad. And the daughter has less excuse.
Okay. Yeah. Hold on. Let me see if I just got to show you. I'm going to take the sound off, even though it's so painful because we should be listening with the sound, but we can't because copyright stuff. But look, let me see when he. Let me. True. Oh, here it is. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I have to cut it out. Hold on. Ready? Watch this though. You know what that move is? He's basically right there. He just did it. He's doing it right there.
I mean, I don't know if that's anything recognizable.
It's a modified butterfly, guys. It's a modified butterfly. Do you not remember the butterfly?
I actually can dance, so I don't know anything about it.
Oh my God, that's the butterfly right there. It's full-fledged butterfly.
Yeah.
How do you not have the butterfly? Oh my God, that's someone else. That was really scary. That was someone who made it.
Now we're within.
Oh, someone who made a video.
That was really scary.
The question is, what is Tom Steyer doing now? Because don't you remember how he was like, we're never going to leave South Carolina. We're so committed. We're so involved. I actually am wondering, like, what is he there? Is he doing like voter outreach? Is he supporting organizations? Like, what happened to Tom Steyer? I mean,
I don't know. I haven't looked into it. All I know is that Bloomberg definitely didn't keep up his end of the bargain.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm a little surprised Tom Steyer didn't get more like establishment support as someone to coalesce around.
Yeah,
I mean, can you really say he's demonstrably worse than Biden? He's a billionaire, so he can spend his own.
He seems
money.
nice.
Yeah, he seems to actually like not be that concerned with like, you know, Green New Deal, different things like that. But since he is a capitalist, he like is a credible capitalist. And it's like, well, look, I'm for some of this stuff, but not because I'm for socialism, but because I'm trying to save capitalism. It actually felt like a very credible bridging of the gap. Yeah. I just feel like an actual billionaire is going to get in there and be like, look, who do you really think I am? I'm a billionaire. Don't worry about it.
Right.
It's Katie,
I hate to do this, but I have to run.
All right, fine.
Okay.
I'll just show this. I'm gonna make us watch more videos of him dancing with no music, so you really appreciate it.
Yeah, Tom Steyer would not have been separated in the 8th grade dance where I was when that song was first out, you know. He would not have been doing anything of note.
Well,
I still remember that. It's like you have PTSD coming through with the flashlight, you know, making you separate.
Yeah.
How can you do that when Juvenile's on? I'm telling you, with a certain subset of people, I'm actually a great DJ. That's you drop that song at the right time of the night with the right subset of people.
Well,
You can
let's
make
let
the
Jack
party.
go, and then you can, and then I'll log off with you after because I see
All right.
Jack.
Okay,
Has to go.
Jack,
See you
it was
later,
a pleasure.
everybody.
Thank you so much. I'm a fan. I'm a
Yeah,
fan.
I'll see you later. I
Yeah.
am too. Nice to
You
talk
guys
to you.
should definitely have Eugene on Struggle
Yeah, we
Session.
should. We should. All right. Talk to you later.
All right, take care.
So
Bye,
yeah,
Katie.
bye.
What? Oh,
I
bye.
just said Jack's great. Your ear should be.
Wait,
on
what
fire.
did you say?
Jack's great. Jack's great. Jack's great. Oh, I thought he was joking. I thought he was hamming it up, but maybe
I think
not.
he was hamming it up.
Oh, he was. Okay.
That's why
He's
he
such
hung
a
up.
nice guy.
Yeah, he is very nice.
Yeah, I think he was a pretty. I still think that was a little bit butterflyish.
Either way, it was one of the great moments in primary campaign history. That's right up there with my man Ed Muskie crying in New Hampshire. It's up there.
Wait, I don't know that reference. By the way,
Oh,
Brad.
you don't know that Ed Muskie in
I'll look into that 1
1972.
second. Let me just make sure. Give it Brad a shout out for pointing this out. Steyer could have just fixed Flint's water, and
That's
probably
100% true, Brad. I agree with that. I mean, he could have done many things.
Yeah.
Why did Biden have Rick Snyder sign a letter for him and then email out to the press list to make sure people saw that Rick Snyder had endorsed him, the guy who poisoned the Flint water, when those are exactly people you need to vote for you? I mean, it really is an own
water,
vote.
just the way you said it. That sounds New York, not Southern.
Well, I mean, don't worry about. I'm internationally known, nationally recognized, and locally accepted. So there are many people. I have many accents.
All right.
I represent many people.
Jewish code switching for me?
Well, I just want you to feel comfortable. I am in Riverdale, so.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That is so funny. What's the other thing? Muskie? What's it called? Who's the thing?
Edmund. He was a presidential candidate in I think it was 72, not 68. He was a prominent senator. He was in New Hampshire, and he says it was snowing, and that he had like an on his eyelash or whatever, but it appeared that he was crying. I think he was like talking about like the coverage of the campaign or something. I've forgotten the exact thing. Edmund Muskie. But he cried. It was kind of famous that he cried, though he claims he never cried. Of course, there's Gary Hart.
Yeah, Gary Hart. Yeah.
The monkey business. Donna Rice, who was the woman who was caught with Gary Hart, is now like a hardcore right winger and a Trump supporter.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to see this. Looks so sad. I see him talking in the snow. It's so sad. He seems like such a sweet guy.
Well, he was running kind of a liberal campaign. A lot of people thought that he had a chance to succeed, and that was, seen to maybe should have really hurt his campaign that he was crying. Maybe now that would be okay. I think in 72 it was not considered manly for that to be happening.
This is a true story, by the way. I feel like I should show it now, but since we talked about it, true story though. I was doing the dishes like a couple months ago, and I was listening to some music. I had like my headphones on. I was listening to music, and I found myself doing this dance, and I was like, "What is this?" I'm like, it was kind of like I was impersonating someone, but I didn't know what it was, and I'm like, I don't know if you ever have this kind of like associative memory where it's like, wait, it's someone who's like kind of like at the moment that I'm channeling, they're like kind of full of themselves and think they're really slick. I didn't intellectually have those thoughts. I just associated those feelings, and then it was Tom Steyer.
Nice.
It was insane. Nice. It was real.
There's something cosmic there, perhaps.
There is, yeah, totally cosmic, yeah.
Yeah. Do you wear plaid at all?
No. Does he wear plaid, Steyer?
The tie.
Oh, the tie. Yeah. No. Oh, yeah. And I think he had it over his
the Scotch guard tie,
right? Didn't he have it over his shoulder?
I think he did have it over his shoulder, but it became his. It was one of those things that like I don't think anyone cared about, but he started calling it his thing and referencing it. Like on the trail, and I was like, this is not like a thing that you have been given. You're just making this up.
That's cute. That's almost cute, though. I'm telling you, I have a soft spot for him. He's endearing. All right, here's the tears thing.
We're really going back in time here.
The meltdown.
Yeah, tears New Hampshire primary of 1972.
I don't know.
You have to kind of hear it with the sound, because I think he was talking about his wife and like the coverage of his wife or something like that. I think. And it's emotional. It's supposed to be emotional.
Can you hear this?
No.
Hold on. It doesn't seem like that matches up anyway. Let me see. Let me stop this and then I'll. What's his name? Muskie. Muskie. Crying. Were you like a real nerd when you were a little kid?
I mean, I don't know. Define nerd.
Like were you always studying and looking into stuff?
I definitely was not always studying for school, but I'd like to say I have a good thirst for knowledge.
But
I wasn't really a great student.
You weren't? Oh, okay.
No.
That's funny. I imagine.
Don't follow me, kids.
All right. Don't do it. All right. Here it
Definitely
is.
don't do it.
Okay. Here it goes. I was a good student.
I could imagine that. I could see that.
You know, couldn't see that. That guy who got in a fight with me about neoliberalism. But anyway, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Tell me if you can hear it when this sounds stumped.
By attacking me, by attacking my wife, he has proved himself to be a gutless coward. I hope that the people of Manchester find a way to say to the pride of Pride's Crossing that they don't like his kind of journalism here in New Hampshire,
I don't see any
and that they say it in a way that they can make it stick. That's the only way he'll understand that here in northern New England, we respect each other. That's something I don't extend to him.
I didn't see any tears.
Well, what do you want me to say? He says that he didn't cry, but people who were there said that there were some tears on him. But he won the New Hampshire primary by a small amount.
Oh, after that?
Yeah, and then something called the Canuck letter was released, and which is a derogatory term towards French Canadians.
Yeah.
It turned out to actually be a forgery by the Nixon administration, by the dirty tricks unit of the Nixon administration. But yeah, there was this whole thing that he was, against French Canadians, which is not small in Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, places like that.
He used the term Canuck. Wow.
Yeah, and so there was this like fake letter.
That was the thing. That's what he was responding to. Got it.
And then it came, and this is what this is about. So the Manchester Union leader, this is what he's talking about his wife. They said that his wife was drunk and racist.
Oh, they're confusing her with Kitty,
with
another New Englander's wife.
Yeah,
Kitty Dukakis. Just kidding.
Was Kitty Dukakis an alcoholic? I didn't know that.
Yeah, she drank rubbing alcohol.
Yikes. Well, hey,
yeah.
we all have our struggles. More power to her. I hope that she overcame. But yeah, Edmund Muskie didn't do that well. All things considered, of course, George McGovern became a candidate, also did not do that well. So
right,
you can go with that one if that's what you want to go with. But yeah, also a prominent senator for many years. I think was involved in the Clean Water Act, if I'm not mistaken. Clean Air Act, one of those two. Muskie was involved in. It's kind of a liberal reputation.
Right. Not Musty, not to be confused with Musty.
No, Muskie.
Right,
Muskie from Maine, senator from Maine.
Right, but Muskie, that organizer.
He was the vice presidential nominee for Hubert Humphrey in 1968.
Who?
Muskie.
Muskie, yeah. But Musty?
I know the term Musty.
Oh, no, it's a person. I'll look it up. He was a... Anyway.
Like AJ Musty?
Yes.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. One of the most well-known pacifists of all time. Obviously played a major role in the early days of the anti-Vietnam War movement. Yeah. Of course, a notable labor leader in the 30s. The Auto Light Strike in Toledo in 1934. Briefly formed the Workers' Party of America in conjunction with the Trotskyist Communist League of America.
Our family friend was his administrative assistant. I should have her on the show. Yeah.
You should. Yeah, very interesting person. Yeah. Very interesting person. Kind of a bridge between the pacifist community and the civil rights movement as well.
Right. Well, that is, I thought, so I guess you don't know who he is. Next time I'll tell you who he is. That's a joke because you know who he is, obviously. Any last questions from people? What are you working on now, Eugene?
What am I working on now?
Yes.
We're actually taking the week off from Breakthrough News. So we'll have some stuff come out, but it's, not as new as it could be. It was recorded on Friday, but they're evergreen stories and they're very relevant. So, just continuing to work on that front at BT Newsroom across all of your social media platforms. We're also on YouTube, Breakthrough News. Absolutely continuing to, work and to push and do whatever I can, around the system in Denver. And, I just try to be wherever I can be, putting shoulder to the wheel in terms of, pushing things in the right direction. Shout out to Ireland. Thank you for that solidarity.
Thanks, Kelly McGuire. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Absolutely. 32 counties, not 26.
Is that an Irish thing?
I mean, it's the real Ireland. If you in the British occupation,
Got it.
Could be happening vis-a-vis Brexit.
Oh wow! You should go. You should do some organizing around that. or coverage.
I would be more than happy if I was invited by the Irish people to put any shoulder to the wheel for the cause of freeing them.
Yeah.
Colonial occupation of the UK.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I mean, you can just come in and just divide a country like that, and it's whatever. I don't want to get into it, but very good place, very good people, some interesting MPs. Mick Kelly, I think, is the guy who's been very good on the Assange issue, and also the bases issue in Ireland. There, shutting down these U.S. bases.
Oh, not bassist, like the guitar
no,
adjacent thing.
bassist.
Okay, cool.
I think it's Mick Kelly, something like that.
Right, got it. Oh, Kelly McGuire invited you. Let's do it. Let's make this happen after.
I'd love to be there. After COVID, I would love to go to Ireland. I had a chance to go a few years ago and didn't take it, and I really regret it.
I had a chance to go to Venezuela and to Brazil, and I'm so annoyed with myself.
Yeah. I've been to one, but not the other. But no, one of the things I can say in favor of Tehran is they have a Bobby Sands Street, and it's the street that the UK embassy is on.
Wow, that's pretty good. I did go to Venezuela, just not that time.
Oh, okay.
There's so many questions, but we'll take one more because if not, we'll be here all night. Someone wanted to know about the DR in Haiti. I mean, that's a pretty.
What about them?
I don't know. Also,
all I can say about that is the protests are ongoing in Haiti against the government there. They've actually kind of cropped back up in the past week or so. It's not getting a lot of news. I actually saw that like an element of the police defected and they were marching as part of this mass demonstration with M16s to protect the people. Very serious social crisis in Haiti right now. The challenge is what will replace the government that's there. But obviously it's lost complete and total. It's lost any sense of hegemony over the government. It's completely corrupt, completely illegitimate. The mass protests there are very militant, but they have to build an institution, I think, that can really seize power. Obviously, the United States will do whatever they can to prevent anything legitimate. They're already working with, Martelli and these people, Marco Rubio and the rest of them to prevent anything real from happening. They're going to try to have a managed transition in Haiti, just like they did, in 1989 when Baby Doc was gone and they had the so-called managed transition. They lost control of it because Aristide became the president, but then of course they coup him out of the country, twice to prevent that. It's unbelievable, really, the number of people who, the number of interventions the U.S. has made in Haiti. But I don't know. That's my only real commentary. DR just had elections. The right wing won the elections. Very unfortunate. Right. I mean, DR is an interesting country, a very high growth rate over the past 10 years, which a lot of people don't know. So it's grown quite a bit. But, there's, I don't know, the politics there. The right wing also won the Jamaican elections recently. So someone asked earlier what I thought about Mia Mottley, who's fantastic, the Prime Minister of Barbados.
And what do you think?
Oh, fantastic. She gave a beautiful speech at the United Nations last year about the importance of climate change, the role of peace in the world. Very progressive, under a lot of pressure because she has been a major figure in promoting negotiations in Venezuela, not sanctions, not regime change, and not war. She sort of took over for former Prime Minister of Spain, Zapatero, is really playing a key role in trying to mediate the situation, which is exactly what's happening now. I mean, there's going to be the National Assembly elections. Many of the largest opposition figures like Enrique Capriles and others are in the election, are recognizing it. So, definitely, certainly the role of Barbados as a diplomatic force there in Venezuela and in the region writ large is big. And the role of Barbados as really the voice of the small countries facing, imminent destruction due to climate change, I think is very important. So, I hope people are paying attention to that.
What did you just say? Sorry, about Zapatero. What did you say?
Well, he was sort of the lead interlocutor there in trying to promote a different role. I mean, the PSOE, the Social Democrats in Spain, have traditionally been a little bit more favorable. Well, I don't want to say that because that's, a right-wing smear. They've been somewhat more favorable to some semblance of democracy in Venezuela. Zapatero was obviously, trying to, he was sort of the head of the second track, pro-diplomacy track there in Venezuela, but he was shut out by the United States, which went on this ridiculous Guaido fake government expedition. Right. But it's all breaking down now, and you can see inside the country they never had a chance. Guaido represents absolutely no one at all. He comes from one of the smallest opposition parties inside of the country, and now the larger opposition parties are participating in the elections in this fall. And I think that it's a notorious thing that someone like Enrique Capriles, who could run against Maduro, who's a critic of Chavez, and all of these people, Freddy Guevara and these others, a terrorist who was let out of prison as a goodwill gesture, who said that they would never live under the 2004 Constitution, that they would never accept the Fifth Republic of Chavez, that they would never recognize that this was a legitimate revolution that had changed that country for the better, are now operating inside the constitutional framework they said they'd never respect, and that they decided to destroy, that they had dedicated their previous careers to destroying. I think that's a powerful statement about the lack of support for these coup-mongering, Rubio-supporting fake Guaido thugs in Venezuela who don't represent anyone or anything. And that's going to be proven other than the ultra rich white people in East Caracas and Maracaibo. So, we'll see what happens, but I think it's going to be, good for Venezuela, and I think an important opportunity to really try to push back on this sanctions regime and this whole idea of isolating the country, which is only hurting average people.
So, all right, that sounds good. Thank you, by the way, Linda Liu, for the 1, 2, 3 for the compliments that I'm a fantastic Katie and the bomb, and for the $9.99. I like that, $9.99.
Yeah,
thank you.
Price.
It's good price, right? Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Kelly. And yeah, I don't know a lot about this YouTube thing, but apparently it's a big deal to like.
Yeah.
So or apparently it's actually a good thing to like or dislike. Like any
interaction is good. Any interaction is good. If you want to do good for Katie Halper on YouTube, you should watch as many of her videos as you can.
Just leave them on in the background, right?
Yeah, the amount of watches is key. The hours watched is key.
Yeah.
So if you want to support Katie, watch everything she does.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then Phil Winter says it's messed up, but Caribbeans who are strivers have always been hold on. Thank you, Guy Shaw, for liking like an MFer. Who are strivers have always been on the bootstrap stuff. Like 30% of my aunties would be Republicans if they weren't openly racist. Oh, if the Republicans weren't openly racist, it's sad. Phil, where's your where are your aunties from? And I will tell my chef that I don't have, but sure, to make chicken soup with rice and garlic.
Not bad.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Fetish Magic.
Antigua.
Oh, Antigua. Is it Antigua or Antigua? I've heard it
I've
pronounced
never
both
actually had
ways.
clarity on that, to be honest with you. I've never actually had clarity on that.
Phil, if it's Antigua with just a G at the end, write G-A. And write, if it's G-U-A pronounced, then write Gua, G-U-A.
Yeah. I should also say Barbados is breaking their link with the British Crown. They're kicking out the
that I knew.
Republic.
That I knew. That's exciting.
Republic. Shout out to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, couldn't happen to a nicer.
Yeah. Was a good victory for the better political party in Trinidad, since we're talking about the PNM. They had in the Caribbean, a lot of people make music videos to promote the parties. There's a number of just amazing videos that come in. I have to say, PNM had an amazing song this year.
PNM is
I think Progressive National Movement, but the ruling party of Trinidad.
Oh, Trinidad, got it. Okay. Okay, no one told it. Oh, so it is Antigua. Okay. Eugene, do you have your own podcasts? They want to know.
Well, we do a podcast on Breakthrough News, but it's for patrons only, although we do release the video a little bit later for other people to see. But yeah, if you go to and check us out on Breakthrough News, we're putting out like every couple of weeks a podcast. And of course, we're doing all our videos and other parts of the show.
Why don't you just turn your videos into podcasts? Have you thought of that?
I thought of all sorts of things.
All right. Well,
yeah. We turned our podcast into a video. We did it all the way around.
Okay, got it. Barack Obama tweeted, the need for non-justice is undeniably clear. # do your job.
I mean, Barack Obama also told LeBron James that they should not strike.
I mean, yeah, actually, okay, last thing I got to show you guys. Well, we did a thing on this where we, who was it? Nando and I made up a listicle of the things that, Obama leaves his, where is it? Where's that beautiful place he lived? Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
The like 4 or 5 things he leaves his Martha's Vineyard Manchin to do, and it's like stop a strike, tell LeBron James not to go on strike, destroy Bernie, destroy Ellison, and like go kite surfing with windsurfing or whatever that thing is with Richard Branson.
Right.
And then this is something someone just showed me this tweet, which is kind of funny. Hold on.
I think I might know this one. I'm not going to predict it because I don't want to ruin it for anyone,
Yeah.
but I have this feeling I know which
Let's
one
see.
it's going to be.
Can you see it?
It's loading.
Oh, loading. The suspense.
Oh, no, I haven't seen this one.
Okay. I want to know that one, though. So this is
Oh,
Obama
they
probably
said
called
RGB. They kind of blew it for themselves.
Oh, no. RBG. It should have been. RBG told her to give up too, but here's the kind of funny.
That one I saw, which was pretty funny.
Yeah.
The other one I saw was that one of Obama and Hillary laughing, and then underneath it, it was like, and then I told LeBron, you know what's better than a strike? Voting.
Oh, that's awful. Awful because it's true.
It is. But shout out to the NBA players, I do have to say. I mean, however much I think a lot of us might have wished them to say more, it's pretty unbelievable that they've basically turned the NBA into an ad for Black Lives Matter. Which, like, if you know anything about the owners of NBA teams, is probably the last thing they would ever want to do. And yeah, maybe there's different things I would be doing, or if they were calling me, I'd be giving them different advice. But to act as if that's not a huge cultural moment when sports is such a way, like the most pro-America, nationalistic, rally around the flag, this is the greatest country, there's nothing wrong, politics is transmitted through, to have one of those entities, probably the most popular one of them all, really become a cultural platform for the politics of Black revolt, even in a watered down sense, I think is a big accomplishment. So I don't want to take that away at all from the players.
Yeah, especially because they have people like Donald Sterling.
I mean, most people. I mean, the people who own it are like right wing, anti-union. Maybe some of them are liberals, I guess, but by and large, these are not progressive people who own professional sports teams. Right. And many of them have. I mean, you look at a lot of them; they have terrible records on a range of different issues.
Yeah. LA sheriff trying to, where's that? Ride on LeBron's jack while he kills and runs. Huh? Oh.
Yeah, well, I didn't know the LA sheriff was supporting LeBron, but the LA sheriff, Alex Villanueva, is fucking terrible. I usually try not to curse on different streams. But the reality is, he comes into office in LA by saying he's not going to cooperate with ICE. He pretends to be like so-called progressive, blah, blah, blah. First thing he does is overturn all the people fired for disciplinary stuff over the past couple years, coddles these gangs inside the LA Sheriff's Department, covers up the murders of people that are happening ongoing right now. The young kid who was killed, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head. Terrible situation. Alex Villanueva, what a fraud.
I think that was actually from like a racist troll. So ignore. Okay. I don't know if he's doing that with.
Well, he's a terrible guy.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah. What's this? What was that soft shoes line? I forgot what that was.
I don't even know.
I don't know.
Probably about how he likes to walk picket lines or something like that.
Yeah. Scary. You think Obama's more progressive than Biden?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't really know how to measure that, but I mean, I think obviously Obama doesn't have anything like Biden's record, so I think you'd have to give him that one. But that's right. That's like one of those, like when the bar is on the ground, it's easy to clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. We'll have to talk about this next time because I disagree with you in terms of the Bernie thing with the Black voters, not the premise of it. I just don't think it would have gone the way you said, but we'll talk about this another time. And that's the nice thing about that is since it's a counterfactual, it's not that time sensitive. Yeah.
It can never be proven to be true.
Yeah, exactly. It's evergreen.
Bring your notes.
I will. Yeah. I'll bring my notes from the future. Thank you guys so much for coming to this stream. Eugene will be back again.
I will.
And make sure you follow him on Eugene Puryear. Let me. There you see his name, his handle, and I am gonna slam NyQuil. Not quite, but I am gonna have some,
I understand.
Homeopathic something.
The exact amount that you're supposed to have on the box. I'm with you.
Yes. And and thank you guys for listening. Make sure you share, support the Patreon, patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And definitely like and share. It costs you nothing. It's apparently good for me and the world and the show. And you guys are
Absolutely.
great. And thank you again, Eugene. And
Of course.
see you
Pleasure was
guys
all mine.
Wednesday night. I'll be interviewing Paula Jean Swearingen.
Nice.
And
West Virginia in the house.
And upcoming within the week, Max Blumenthal. Not sure if that's going to be Wednesday or Sunday, but one of those days. Yeah.
You got a lot coming on. I appreciate that. You're on multiple days a week. You're like the NFL.
Oh, and then Gerald Horn, Dr. Gerald Horn.
Oh, my
Sunday.
man.
Yeah.
Great Dr. Gerald Horn.
Yeah. He's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. I was honored to be on.
Thank you. Honored to have you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. All right, guys. I will see you next week. Oh, I do look very sick. My nose looks red. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.